Now, today, we are gonna see, what if Harry Potter had private relationship with Luna Lovegood? Episode 2. Join Patreon for early access and exclusive content of Super Op stories. Also adult and steamy Harry Potter stories too. Please subscribe this channel, because definitely I will try my best to provide a valuable content for you all. Also check the description to support the original author for this beautiful creation. Not that it isn't always a pleasure, but what prompted the visit, Philip? Problem dealing with security, Phil replied, taking a seat and waving for Harry to do the same. You know where my daughter goes to school? I am aware, the man agreed. Happen to know where I can find some of that sort of security. Afraid the ones we've got are all tied up, the man said regretfully. I imagine that your young house guest could round some up though. He'd been more than a bit surprised by the contents of the boy's dossier. Phil shot Harry a curious look. What do you mean by that? You mean you don't know? The man hit a button on his desk to activate his intercom. Hold all calls and meetings. Yes, sir, his secretary's voice agreed. Luna was bouncing up and down in excitement as she waited for her friend to appear. The fact that she had a friend gave her a warm feeling in the pit of her spleen that quickly spread to fill the rest of her body. Did you forget anything, Crabapple? Her father asked helpfully. Loads of things, Luna agreed. That way I wouldn't forget anything important. Her father nodded, sounded logical to him. A flash of bushy hair caught Luna's attention and as she quickly confirmed that her very best friend had arrived. Hermione, Luna squealed. Luna, Hermione replied as she rushed over. The two girls embraced and began rapidly chattering excitedly to each other in an incomprehensible technobabble. Do you understand any of that? Luna's father ventured cautiously. Not a word, Anne replied. Good, he sighed in relief. I thought I was the only one and then I started getting worried that I'd forgotten how to understand English for a moment. Larry Lovegood. Anne Granger, she introduced herself. Pleasure. Pleasure is all mine, Larry said quickly. His eyes shifted to the menacing-looking figures that had surrounded their little gathering. They with you? I need one to carry the heavy things for us after we go shopping later and they were convenient, Anne joked. Oh, right. Forgot you couldn't use charms to make things easier, Larry said, accepting the woman's explanation. Harry was shocked when they were immediately met by an important-looking goblin upon their entrance to Gringotts. Mr. Granger, a pleasure to see you again, the goblin said with a show of pointed teeth. What can Gringotts do for you today? Thank you for seeing us so soon, Hooktooth, Phil greeted the goblin. I'd like to establish an account for my daughter and Harry would like a statement. If that's not too much trouble. Not at all, Hooktooth replied. Why don't I show you to the lounge while we get the paperwork together? Thank you, Phil said graciously. The goblin took them to a richly carpeted room and directed them to sit in two exquisitely made comfortable-looking chairs. Please help yourselves to anything in the room with the management's compliments, Hooktooth said politely. The paperwork should already be on the table next to you. Here it is, Phil agreed. It shall take us a few minutes to do a quick audit of Mr. Potter's vault, the goblin said respectfully, and to make a quick notation in the boy's file to ensure he got a high level of service. Wouldn't do to offend someone with such powerful friends. We aren't in any hurry, Phil assured the goblin. Then I shall take my leave. Please pull the bell cord if you need anything, Hooktooth said as he took his leave. The Lovegoods' eyes were wide in fascination as they stared at the scenery through the car windows. Every second brought something new and exciting. I never realized the Muggle world was so complicated, Luna admitted. The little blonde was a bit intimidated by the size of everything. None of my Muggle studies books said it was anything like this. Purebloods, Hermione snorted. A contrite look immediately appeared on her face. I'm sorry, Luna, I didn't mean any offense by that. The girl in question giggled as her father answered for them both. None taken, Luna's father murmured. It's a well-known fact that there isn't a pureblood alive that has enough common sense to fill a teaspoon. Where are we going for lunch, Mum? Hermione asked, desperately trying to change the subject to anything else. Marvelous place Thomas showed me over on the East End, Anne replied. I think you'll like it. Ms. Hermione, the large driver rumbled from the front seat. Phil and Harry broke off their conversation when the door to the room opened to admit the oddly polite goblin that had shown them in earlier. The preliminary audit of Mr. Potter's accounts has been completed, Hooktooth announced as he entered the room. Mr. Granger, the board asked me to again express their thanks for the help you've given us. Please tell the board that I'll always be happy to turn a profit, Phil said formally. The occasions that I'm able to help others make profit as well, I consider myself doubly blessed. I shall pass your words back to my superiors, Hooktooth agreed. Mind if I get my business out of the way first, Harry? Phil asked. I promise that it won't take but a minute. No problem, Mr. Granger, Harry said quickly. Phil, he corrected himself upon seeing a brief look of annoyance flash over the man's face. Have you decided how much you'd like to put into your daughter's account, Mr. Granger? Hooktooth asked. Not much, only about 500,000 galleons, he replied. Please tell me if she runs through it and please extend credit if she needs it. Of course, Mr. Granger. The goblin agreed quickly. Needs, not wants, he cautioned. I want her taken care of if there's an emergency in the same way I want her to get my permission. Before she decides to buy out every bookstore in the country or something like that. We will see to it, Mr. Granger, the goblin assured his customer. I've already filled out the paperwork, Phil said. Don't believe there was any other business I needed to take care of. Mr. Potter has 540,215 galleons, 2,013 sickles, and 512 nuts. In addition to that, he has 3 sets of silver, 2 gold cups, 12 silver cups, 15 golden rings, 6 emeralds, 20 uncut diamonds, 15 ounces of gold dust. $2,000 in American gold eagles, $200 in American silver coin, $10,000 of American currency, 2,000 Canadian dollars in mixed silver and gold coin, 3,000 pounds in gold coin. 100,000 Swiss francs in mixed gold and silver coin, 5,000 French francs in silver coin, 500 Dutch guilders in silver coin, 1 Wilkinson motorbike. 15 cases of scotch, 12 of gin, and 13 of rum. Plus 3 sealed chests, 2 sealed file cabinets, and assorted closed bags. Was that the face value of the coins or the gold and silver value? Phil asked. Face value, Hooktooth replied. Any idea why there's so much foreign currency in Harry's account? Phil asked, noticing the confused look on the boy's face. It's rumo. Read that the Potter family made most of its fortune sneaking alcohol into the United States during their great experiment, and a bit more of it sneaking things into and out of the continent during the last Muggle War and possibly during earlier Muggle Wars. Gringotts has no evidence that any laws were broken and thus has no obligation to investigate or to report anything to the Ministry, the goblin added with a toothy grin. We value our customers' confidentiality more than we value our relationship with the current and every past magical government, something the current magical government has publicly complained about on numerous occasions. Thank you, Phil laughed. Wonderful story about your family, Harry. Wish mine were half as good. You don't want to know what we made the bulk of our first major fortune on. What? Harry asked automatically. Guano, Phil said with a sour look on his face. Disgusting stuff. Even more disgusting was how they mined a lot of it. I'm fortunate that my ancestor was intelligent enough to diversify and more fortunate that his successor was good enough to divest the whole disgusting business before. Well, I don't need to bore you with the details or the horrors. Oh, he made a mental note to ask Hermione about it later. Would you mind too terribly letting us use the flow on the way out? Phil asked. Of course not, Hooktooth said quickly. This way, sir. They stopped in front of a large stone fireplace and Phil carefully threw a pinch of powder into the fire. Department of Magical Law Enforcement, he called out. I hate these things, Phil murmured as he bent down. What followed was a hurried conversation with someone on the other end. They'd like to speak with you, Harry. Okay. Harry took the man's place and finished the conversation 2 minutes later. Guess they're not too busy today. We've got an appointment right now if we want it. Hooktooth escorted the 2 humans to the bank's exit and waited until they were out of sight. Then, in a quick walk, he disappeared through one of the side doors, intent on reaching his manager's office as quickly as possible. To his considerable surprise, he was intercepted and taken deeper and deeper into the bowels of the bank to thick bronze door behind which could only be one goblin, the clan chief himself. Hooktooth's escort threw open the doors and led the goblin thug H.A. Rich waiting room to a large steel door. Wait here, the escort ordered. Hooktooth didn't even have time to agree before his escort disappeared. Minutes later, the large doors opened to reveal what was within. The walls were covered in functional and well-used weapons covering every era of goblin combat. From the axes and swords of ancient times to the SMLE and the Lewis, of the latest and most successful revolt. At the center of the room was a middle-aged goblin sitting behind a heavy oak desk. "Come in," the goblin ordered. "Yes, sir," Hooktooth agreed. He marched in and stopped for paw. CES in front of the desk in a rigid attention. "Report," the goblin barked. "Sir, the Granger wished me to pass on his regards. He told me that he was always happy to turn a profit and was doubly blessed. Said when he was able to turn a profit for others at the same time," Hooktooth said quickly. "He came to open a vault for the younger Granger." "How much did he put into it?" 500,000 galleons, Hooktooth said immediately. "Which he attached to an unlimited line of credit if there is an emergency, though we are to contact the elder Granger for approval if there is not." Testing his progeny, the goblin mused. "Possibly, sir," Hooktooth replied. "It may have just been an expense account. Pass any duties you may have that could come into conflict with your service to the Granger family. I want you to focus on them and I want you to keep me apprised on what is happening through Sub-Chief Bloodroot. See that he knows everything the younger Granger chooses to do with the account. And every other scrap of information you come across regarding the Granger family or the Potter," the goblin ordered. "I want you to also be sure that the counter drones know that the younger Granger is to be treated with the same amount of respect accorded to her sire. Emphasis how displeased I will be with them personally if they forget their place." "Yes, sir," Hooktooth agreed. "Should I do the same with the Potter?" "Why, I am sure that you are already aware, sir, but the Granger was accompanied by the last Potter." "I am. Were you able to find out why?" "I'm told the last Potter is a close companion of the younger Granger," Hooktooth said quickly. "Keep an eye on that one too then," the chief said after a moment of thought. "I will, sir." "Was there anything else?" "No, sir." Dismissed. Amelia was in the middle of a rather large stack of paperwork when her assistant threw open the door and barged in without warning. "What is it?" Amelia demanded, more than a bit annoyed at the interruption. "It had better be bloody important." "Harry Potter to see you, ma'am," the star-struck assistant said quickly. "Show him in," Amelia ordered, slightly confused by the visit. A few minutes later, the savior of the wizarding world, the boy who lived himself, arrived with an unfamiliar man in tow. "Thank you for seeing me, Madam Bones," Harry said politely. "I understand how busy your schedule must be. Just what was so important that you needed to see me immediately?" Amelia asked, barely keeping her temper under control at the thought that she'd been interrupted for something that wasn't of vital importance. "When we flowed, your assistant told us to come over to meet with you right away, Madam Bones," Harry replied quickly, hoping to defuse the woman. "I see," Amelia sighed, her anger disappearing in a flash as she deduced the likely course of events which had led them to their current meeting. "Have a seat." She waited until her visitors had made themselves comfortable. "What can I do for you, Mr. Potter?" Wasn't the boy's fault her normally level-headed assistant was a bit of a fangirl. "As I said before, I flowed your office to ask if you had a list of, Harry looked over at Hermione's father. "Private security contractors," Phil supplied. "Your assistant said that I should have a talk with you," Harry said politely. "I see." Amelia leaned back in her chair and rubbed her temple. "Short answer is, there aren't any. Would you like the long answer?" "Please," Harry agreed. "I know of a couple dozen ex-Aurors that would be happy for the work if why. Oh, you don't mind Muggle-borns and half-bloods?" "I don't mind them at all, Madam Bones," Harry replied. In fact, he preferred them, less chance they'd be tied to the pureblood factions. "Good. What would you like in return?" Phil asked smoothly. "What do you mean by that?" Amelia snapped. "I'm not asking if you'd like a bribe," Phil laughed, happy to see a bit of honesty in what his sources had informed him was a pit of corruption. "I'm asking if there is anything either of us can do to return the favor." "Sorry, it's just working around here you get used to people expecting you to act a certain way and around here that certain way is filthy." Amelia pursed her lips. "We're doing a benefit for disabled Aurors, widows, and orphans in a few months. An appearance by Mr. Potter would help us meet our goal." If I can get the time off school, Harry agreed, happy that he could do something to repay his host. And so long as I wouldn't have to stay too long. He blushed. I really don't like crowds, he admitted. Bloody hate them myself, Amelia said with a tight smile. I'll be in touch. Thank you for your time, Madam Bones, Phil said, raising to his feet. Sorry for the mix-up, Harry added. Got me away from my paperwork, Amelia said with a shrug. Something that's rarely a bad thing. Have a good day. They left the office and were halfway out of the ministry when Harry heard a familiar voice calling his name. Neville, Harry called back. What are you doing here? Gran is talking to one of her pet politicians, Neville explained. You. Meeting with Madam Bones, Harry replied. Phil Granger stepped into the background to allow the two boys a bit of time to themselves and was joined a few minutes later by an elderly woman. I hadn't realized my Neville was such good friends with the boy who lived. The old woman said happily. Philip Granger, he introduced himself. Hermione Granger's father and Harry's host for the holidays. Dame Augusta Longbottom, she introduced herself. A pleasure to make your acquaintance, Dame Augusta. The pleasure is mine, Mr. Granger. Gran, can Harry come to the party? Neville asked excitedly. Of course, Augusta agreed. Happy that hers was the first invitation that the Potter accepted and that it was Neville that had scored their family the social coup. Harry nudged Neville with his elbow, causing the other boy to blush a deep red. He's with Hermione and Luna this winter, so of course 3 invitations will be delivered to your 3 guests, Augusta said smoothly. Thank you, Gran. Of course, Neville. I would be happy to extend another for yourself and your wife, Mr. Granger. Thank you, Dame Augusta, Phil said quickly. Why don't we let the boys have a bit of time to themselves? Augusta made a snap decision. Neville, stay here and meet with Mr. Potter. We'll just be down the hall if you need us. Okay, Gran, Neville agreed. The 2 adults walked off to gain a bit of privacy. What can I do for you? Mr. Granger, I'm afraid that our invitation will need to include a few members of our staff, Phil said with a look of embarrassment. I hate to impose like this. I trust that they are aware of the fact that magic is real. Augusta asked. Yes, Phil agreed. Again, I'm terribly sorry to impose like this, but there are security concerns that I can't ignore. Wasn't permitted to ignore. The more service he gave his country, the more restrictions were placed on his private life. I was told that you and your wife are dentists, Augusta asked with a raised eyebrow, wondering what other information might be missing from her files. My wife is a practicing dentist, Phil agreed. I dabble a bit, mostly assisting her or doing charity, but unfortunately most of my time is taken up dealing with other business these days. I see. The old woman considered the man for a moment. Please consider your staff included in the invitation. Thank you for your consideration, Dame Augusta. Think nothing of it, Mr. Granger. Hermione frowned in confusion when the car took an unexpected turn away from the route that would take them back to her weekend house. Are we going to the London house, Mum? She asked cautiously. We're making a quick stop before we head home, Anne said calmly. Thomas suggested that it might be something you girls would enjoy. Fig, you and your friend might enjoy a quick peek before we go back, the big man rumbled. Where are we going, Mum? Hermione asked curiously. Covent Garden. I thought you girls might want to get a look at the trains on display at the Transport Museum. You hear that, Luna? Hermione squealed in excitement. I did, Hermione, Luna agreed. Shame we couldn't bring Harry with us. This is just a short visit, Anne pointed out. You can bring him along later, when we have the time for a proper look around. Yes, Mum, Hermione agreed. Omake. Harry was surprised to be ushered into a private office the minute they entered the bank. Seconds after they took their seats, an important-looking goblin rushed in. Mr. Granger, forgive the delay but I'm afraid. Phil motioned for the goblin to be silent. Don't mean to be rude but we're a bit pressed on time, Harry. Can't be away too long or she'll start to suspect something, Harry agreed. Of course, Mr. Granger, the goblin agreed quickly. I'm going to need to exchange a small amount of pounds too. Galleons, Phil began. I have my man taking care of that right now. And I'll send word to the tellers to bring him to the front of the line, the goblin interjected. Very good. Phil smiled. The other matter might be a bit more difficult. Difficult, the goblin echoed. I'd like to set up a small account for my daughter, Phil explained. And I wasn't sure if you could accept a wire transfer. Of course, Phil agreed. Now as to the fee, what sounds fair to you? 2%, the goblin suggested hopefully. Down from E50 he'd originally planned to tack on. How about 10 galleons? Phil suggested. Now as to the interest rate you're going to give me. Air Craftsman Shaw's superior motorcycle. Air Craftsman Shaw's superior motorcycle. Harry and Phil left the bookshop at Diagon Alley laden with wrapped packages and surrounded by grim unsmiling men. Thanks for letting me make a couple quick stops, Harry said gratefully. No problem, Harry, Phil replied. Still want to make a stop at a normal bookstore on the way back. If it isn't too much trouble, Harry agreed. Unless of course, you've already picked a bunch of engineering manuals for Hermione and Luna. Christmas shopping. It's my first real Christmas, Harry said simply. Spent with a family and outside of the school, as it was supposed to be. I want to make it special. We've got about 4 hours before we need to be back, Phil said after a quick glance at his watch. Leaves us an hour or two for shopping. I hope it doesn't take that long, Harry said quickly. Spoken like a true man, Phil laughed. They walked through the cauldron and stepped into the waiting car. Excuse me for a moment, Harry, Phil said as he opened a compartment and pulled out a handset. I need to make a quick call. Sure, Harry agreed. It's me, Phil said into the phone. Did you get my fax? So soon. Good. Buy it and keep an eye out for more of them. Pulled up the rails, huh? Put an auction on it. What's your other idea? Get a list. Put the ones in Scotland and near my house near the top. Good. Good. Really. Good. I'll talk to you later. He hung up the phone and carefully closed the compartment. Sorry about that, Harry. No problem. I know how it can be sometimes. What did you have in mind? Phil asked. Sir, for the girls, what did you want to get them? Figured I'd get a couple engineering texts for Luna, Harry replied. Don't know what for Hermione. Was hoping that I could find something in Diagon, but that ended up being a bust. Looked like he was going to have to send Hedwig out if he wanted to get something special. Could you drop us off at Father's garage? Hermione requested politely as they pulled onto the family lands. I want to show Luna the car Father's building with me. No problem, Ms. Hermione, the large driver agreed after receiving a discreet nod from the girl's mother. Thank you, Thomas, the girl said politely. Hermione turned back to her friend. Daddy is also letting me keep Harry's motorcycle collection there. How wonderful, Luna said with a smile. The car pulled out of a stand of trees, allowing Luna her first look at the impressive Granger residence. It's very large, Luna mumbled in shock. Very, very large. My great-great-great-grandfather wanted to show off rather than use the money for something useful. Hermione sniffed at the thought of someone being so vain. It's no worse than what your ancestors on the other side did. Darling, Anne laughed, thinking of the monstrosity. Why, that was her own family's ancestral home. You must remember to judge people by the standards of their day, darling, not your own. Yes, Mum, Hermione agreed. Phil turned to Harry as the car pulled to a stop in front of the stately Granger residence. I'll go distract the girls, you get everything hidden in your room. All right, Harry agreed. Give me 15 minutes before you make your move, Phil said as he got out of the car. Help him with the things, James. Yes, sir, the driver agreed. Phil found the girls tinkering with a motorcycle in his garage. Hello girls, he said, announcing himself. Keeping busy? Yes, Daddy, Hermione agreed. Yes, Mr. Granger, Luna said shyly. Call me Phil, he said with a smile. He froze. Is there something wrong, Daddy? Hermione asked, worried at his sudden and abrupt change in demeanor. Do you know what this is? Phil gasped, staring at the bike the two girls were working on in shocked wonder. What is it, Daddy? Hermione asked. It's a Vincent Black Prince. Phil said in shocked awe. It was the greatest motorcycle of its time. One of Harry's. Yes, Daddy, Hermione agreed. Why don't you show me the rest of his collection? Phil suggested, voice catching. It was unlikely that the boy had another piece that was even half as spectacular, he told himself. Best not get one's hopes up, he told himself. But Phil's heart was beating a mile a minute in anticipation as he followed the girls into the depths of the garage. We've only got maybe a third of it put back together, Hermione warned as she led him to the part of the garage she'd commandeered. Phil was dumbstruck. Before him were rows upon rows of carefully assembled classic motorcycles. To think he'd hoped the boy would have one interesting piece in his collection. What lay before him exceeded even his wildest dreams. I'm gonna need to contact someone I know about this, Phil mumbled half to himself as his mind began to catalog some of the other treasures. Why's that, Daddy? Hermione asked. Because the value of this may dwarf what Harry already has in his vault, Phil replied. The Vincent alone is worth. He shook his head. Tell me if he decides to sell any of this. I'm not normally interested in motorcycles, but I'd be prepared to make an exception for some of this. To rob his favorite brother-in-law of the chance to purchase them if for no other reason. All right, Daddy, Hermione agreed. Just so you know, I don't think Harry will be interested in selling any of this. That's fine, darling. Is it really that valuable? Luna asked shyly. I think so, Phil agreed. It's not really my field, but they sell motorcycles at some of the auctions I attend, so I do have some idea. He shook his head in shock. When you told me Harry had a motorcycle collection, I'd assumed, well, I don't know what I'd assumed, but I surely didn't expect something like this. I think Harry would, Hermione replied. I'd like to at least try it. So would I, Luna agreed. I'll see to it, darling, he agreed. Phil made a mental note to pick up a couple of disposable bikes for the lessons. He couldn't in good conscience allow them to learn on T. He gems before him, knowing what a crime it would be, a crime to let one of Harry's classics get damaged by a beginner's mistake, even with magic to make it better. Anne caught Harry as he was walking rough the front door with the purchases he'd made in Diagon Alley and later at a more mundane bookshop. Christmas presents? She asked dryly. Yes, Mrs. Granger, Harry agreed. Take the bags from HAREM and make sure they're hidden where my daughter and her guest can't find them. Anne shot an order at one of the maids. And I'll delivered an envelope for you, Harry. It's in the study. Probably from Neville. He promised invitations for me and the girls to his party, Harry replied. There should be one for you too. In a daze, Phil stumbled back into the house and collapsed into his favorite chair. The Vincent had been just the tip of what he now believed would turn out to be one of the better collections of classic British motorcycles in the country, if not the world. Under my nose the whole time, and I didn't even know it. He mumbled to himself. Everyone dreamed of finding a classic automobile in a forgotten barn. Harry had found dozens of classic motorcycles in a derelict townhouse. The boy had the devil's own luck. Something wrong, sir? The butler asked. Sorry. I asked if there was something wrong, sir, the butler repeated. Ah, no, I hadn't realized the extent of Harry's motorcycles collection until I had a chance to see it for myself, Phil said with a laugh. Please remind me to get someone in to appraise it and remind me to see that it gets insured before the end of the holidays. I will, sir, the butler agreed. Your wife asked me to find you, sir. She wants to have a word about the invitation you accepted earlier today. A good word, or a bad one? I wouldn't care to guess, sir. Of course you wouldn't, Phil sighed. Do you happen to know where she is right now? In the study with young Mr. Harry, the butler replied. Thank you. Phil rose to his feet. Best go see what she wants. I've found it best not to put these things off, sir, the butler agreed with a grin. James and Thomas would like a word after your wife is finished with you, sir. Tell them that should I survive, I'll meet with them in my office. I shall. Good luck, sir. When he found her, his lady wife had an expression of extreme annoyance on her face. One she focused on him the second he made his appearance. What have I done now? He asked calmly. 2 days doesn't give me a lot of time to prepare for a social event, she said with a frown. Especially not our debut in magical society. I hadn't realized it was so soon, Phil admitted contritely. Sorry about that, dear. I'd have been sure to call ahead if I had known. It's no big deal, Anne said with a wave. Just means we don't have much time to get Hermione and Luna's dresses made. The woman had been more than a bit relieved to learn that Harry's wardrobe had already taken care of. She'd also been more than a bit impressed by the extent of it, The boy had everything from evening wear to traditional Highland dress. You've already called your dressmaker then? Of course, Anne agreed. Why? Quote, because you might have asked the girls first, Phil pointed out. For all we know they might want to wear formal robes. You're right, Anne sighed. They're in the garage, aren't they? Should be, Phil agreed. It's where they were a couple minutes ago anyway. Anne found the two girls after a couple minutes of searching and was a bit put out by her daughter's admitted ignorance of the matter. She'd told the girl more than once how important it was to at least have some idea of what to wear for a formal event. I don't know, Hermione admitted. I don't really pay too much attention to that sort of thing, to be quite frank. She didn't see what the big deal was. Darling, your social position means that you have to know these things, Anne chided gently. You're going to have to learn these things someday. HMPH, Hermione sniffed in mock disdain. Either one will be fine, Luna offered shyly after it became clear that Hermione had nothing more to add. In fact, a dress might be better if the level of quality is high enough. For a party hosted by the Longbottoms anyway, it would give them a chance to show off how progressive they were to the right sort. Thank you, Luna, Anne said with a smile. I am happy to help, Anne, Luna replied, basking in the woman's approval. James made a show of handing Thomas a couple coins when Phil entered his office to meet with them. What was that all about? Just a little wager, James explained. Didn't believe you'd get here in one piece. Thomas figured your low-class background would see you through. What low-class background? Phil laughed. Eton followed by Cambridge like my father before me and his before him and so on. I'm as privileged as one can find. Yeah, James agreed. But you aren't any sort of lord. Mizzen. Nay says that makes you a frightfully low-class commoner. Not half a step out the East End the way she sees it. Must be feeling frisky tonight if she asked you to put on that show, Phil said eagerly. Enough fun. What did you two want to speak with me about? Few names on the list you gave us stood out. Got a couple retired constables, one guy I knew in the regiment that was a greengrocer last I heard from, I.M. And a couple that work for your friend at the club. Wonder if he knows about them. Phil said thoughtfully. You want to hire them? Be nice, James agreed. Also like your mission to talk to a couple people that Mr. Harry mentioned. You don't mind werewolves, do you, Mr. Granger? Thomas asked with a grin. Mr. Harry says that he's got one in mind that's an OKBL, Oaken that he can probably find more like I.M. that are only out of it a few nights a month. Promises that we aren't in any danger if we take precautions. You're joking. Afraid not, sir, Thomas replied. We'll need a secure room for him to lock himself in a few nights a month if you give the go-ahead. I hired you two because you had good judgment, not because I wanted you to come to me every time you had a decision to make. Phil told them with a grin. Use your judgment. Yes, sir, James agreed. I thought he hired us because we were a couple strapping young lads that were easy on the eyes, Thomas whispered loudly. Least, that's what his ex-sister-in-law told us. It's a good thing that Mrs. Granger is understanding about these sorts of things, James agreed. Still a shame. She's keeping him from living openly though. The more I hear about that gold-digging witch, the gladder I am that my idiot brother divorced her, Phil sighed. We might have had a few contingency plans in place if he didn't. James admitted happily. There's a reason the other servants were so attentive every time she came to the house and why Ms. Hermione was always taking a nap and not to be disturbed whenever that witch wanted to see her. Miss Jane had only had to get nasty about it once, not even the witch had been stupid enough to try to push things a second time. It was a pity in a way. There would been no chance of her trying anything a third time if she had. Fortunately, that never had to happen, Thomas said in relief. Dare I ask? Probably best if you didn't, sir. No worse than what you'd have ordered in any case if that makes you feel better. Nothing that was too far out from what you'd already ordered, sir, James added. We just used our judgment to cover a few gaps you didn't think to. Thank you, both of you. All of you, he corrected himself. Please pass my heartfelt thanks on to everyone involved. Luna took the seat next to Hermione, who in turn was seated in her customary spot next to Harry and across from her parents as they sat down at the table and did her best to ape the other girls' movements so as to fit in the unfamiliar setting. Luna, Anne called out with a smile. Hermione isn't the best one to copy. Her knowledge of etiquette wouldn't fill a thimble. Luna looked down at her pate with a deep blush. Oh. Don't be embarrassed, dear. You're doing things exactly the way you're supposed to in an unfamiliar situation. I just thought I'd give you a small warning before you picked up any of my daughter's many bad habits. I still say that none of that matters. Hermione insisted, chin going up. It's not like I'm going to go to any of your social events. Those fancy rituals of yours are just ways to set yourself apart from the other classes. Phil's booming laugh echoed throughout the room. Wonderful argument, darling. I recall your mother making a similar argument when. Hush, Anne cut him off. A deep blush adorned the woman's face as she remembered the incident and the argument it spawned that had resulted in their only daughter. She suppressed the heartache that accompanied the thought that Hermione would likely be an only child with the ease of long practice. One miracle was likely more than any family had a right to hope for. Mum, I agree with you to some extent, darling. Anne gave an impish smile. Ju. Be aware of how much of an asset it can be to fit into whatever society you're in. Yes, Mum, Hermione agreed. Anne gave a satisfied nod before turning to her newest guest. So. Luna, Hermione telephone. LS me that your family is in the newspaper business. Since 1769 when my ancestor started printing broadsides, Luna said, resisting the urge to look down at her lap. Do you happen to know how much your father charges for advertising space? Phil asked absently. Because I. No business at the table, Anne cut him off. Sorry, Luna. I do, Luna agreed. We can discuss rates later if you like. Harry kept silent throughout the meal, choosing instead to observe his dining companions and to listen to the conversations happening around him. So this is what a normal family is like, he marveled. Before Luna arrived, he hadn't been able to sit back and take it all in and, as much as he cared for them, the Weasleys could never be considered normal. Would this be what his parents would have been like? Harry wondered to himself. Would his family have sat around the table seamlessly shifting from conversation to conversation? Another reason to curse Voldemort, he concluded. Dead to himself as the meal came to a close. I'll join you, Phil said with a smile of anticipation. Good night, Harry, girls. Good night, Mum. Good night, Daddy, Hermione replied automatically. Come on, Luna, you're sharing my room. All right, Hermione, Luna agreed, allowing herself to be dragged out of the room. Good night, Harry, she called over her shoulder. Good night, Harry said to the now empty room. He nodded to the maids as they began clearing the table, treasuring every moment of his holiday at the Granger home. Phil was unsurprised to find that Harry had already awoken in Eden when he finally managed to pull himself out of bed. The short time he'd known the boy had already familiarized him with his young guest's habits. A frown appeared on the man's face. Really need Ed to speak to his brother-in-law to see how things were progressing. Morning, Phil, Harry said cheerfully. Harry, Phil grinned. Ever play golf? No, sir. Would you care to learn? Phil asked hopefully. The girls will be busy getting their dresses fitted, so I figured it would be best to get out of the house. Sure, Harry agreed. When do we leave? How about now? Phil suggested. Hermie. One had to drag herself out of bed the next morning. Having been up half the night chatting with Luna, waking up was a chore. I'm sorry, Hermione, did I wake you? Luna's chirped. I've tried to be quiet so I wouldn't disturb you. How long have you been up, Luna? Hermione demanded. I slept in a bit, Luna admitted guiltily. So, 5 or so hours. 1:30, Luna happily supplied the answer. Which is why I allowed myself to sleep in. I don't usually stay up so late. Have you had breakfast yet? I was afraid to leave the room, Luna admitted. I know I'd get lost in this giant use of yours if I did, and I'm not sure anyone would ever find me again. Afraid that no one would ever find you again. Good one, Luna, Hermione giggled. Come on, let's go get something to eat. All right, the confused blonde agreed. She hadn't realized that she had said something funny. She mentally went over the conversation they'd just had and came up blank. Phil was about to make his shot and Harry's hand flashed in front of his face, causing him to abort it in mid-stroke. Trying to spoil my shot? He asked with a grin. Sorry. Harry opened his hand and let the golf ball he'd caught fall to the ground. Didn't think you'd want to get hit. Good reflexes, Phil commented calmly. James, yes, sir. I thought you said my brother-in-law wasn't playing today. He wasn't supposed to be, sir, James replied. Mind if we cut the game short, Harry? Phil asked. I think I've had enough close calls today, and my brother-in-law on the course means that while that may be the first, it certainly will not be the last or even the worst. All right, Harry agreed. Come on, Phil said, turning to walk towards the clubhouse where there was less chance of being hit by an errant shot. I'll introduce you to Hermione's uncle. I think you'll like him. He's a nice enough chap for a completely useless bastard. After being forced to endure the horror of being measured and fitted, Hermione and Luna retreated to the safety of the garage to continue their work on Harry's motorcycles collection. Hermione. The girl heard her mother's voice. You have a visitor. Who is Professor Lupin? She said in delight. What are you doing here? Found 2 more boxes of those parts, Remus replied. Not sure if you want them, but I put them aside for you like you asked. Thank you, Remus, Hermione said sweetly. I'll tell Harry that you're the one that's been finding all this for him. I'm not doing much, Remus said with a pleased blush. Just cleaning the place up because I don't have anything else to do. Please bring any Muggle things, books, and notes to me before throwing them out, Hermione requested. Everything you've found so far has been fascinating. I wouldn't throw a NY thing out without talking to you and Harry first, Remus promised. Not even the dark items. Might have to fight Bill for those though. What's he want with dark items? Hermione's lip curled in disgust. Says removing the curses helps keep his hand in, Remus replied. Tears were streaming down Harry's face and his chest felt like it was going to burst. He hadn't laughed so hard or so much in, maybe ever. No more, he wheezed. No more jokes, I don't think I can take it. Suit yourself, Hermione's uncle, the man that had introduced himself as Lord Useless VII sniffed. Youth these days have no endurance. The man was just over 6 feet with dark hair and a physique that gave lie to his claims of idleness. Nah, Phil disagreed. It's like getting exposed to an infectious disease the first time. Kids got no natural immunity. He smirked. I do, and as an expert on infectious diseases, my professional opinion is that your jokes are as bad as your game. Not my fault you weren't standing anywhere near the hole, Hermione's uncle barked. We both know that the object of the game is to get the ball anywhere but the hole with extra points if you get it in the rough, the water, or the sand. You've got it backwards again. So you say. I on the other hand maintain that your position is based on the fact that you're just jealous of my perfect game. With. Yes, sir, Harry agreed. Call me Jim, he said easily. Do I need to make any threats about treating her right? I mean, it goes without saying that I'll break your legs if you make her cry, doesn't it? Let alone, what I'll do to you if you hurt her in any way. The staff already took care of that, Harry replied cheerfully. I'll tell you the same thing I told them. She's my best friend, if someone hurts her, I will kill them. Both men were taken aback at the sense of certainty in the boy's voice when he delivered the statement. There had been no humor, no menace, no more emotion than if he'd been commenting on the weather. Good to hear, Jim replied weakly. What in the heck had the boy endured to forge such steel at such a young age? That thought was quickly followed by another, more terrifying thought. Had any of it spilled over onto his niece? He'd have to make a note to request some time off to resolve things personally if so. Harry's got a black prince, Phil said suddenly, desperately, hoping to change the subject even as his mind whirled with similar thoughts to those of his brother-in-law. My word, really? Jim stared at Harry for a couple seconds. Any chance you'd be willing to sell it to me? He asked hopefully. Not at the moment, Harry replied. I'll let you know if I change my mind. Wherever did you find it? Jim persisted. My godfather left it to me along with his other motorcycles, Harry replied. What else do you have? Jim asked eagerly. Are you willing to part with any of them? They're still going through it, Harry replied. And not at this time. Darn, Jim cursed. He's got Hermione going through it and putting it all back together, Phil laughed. Turned my perfect little princess into a greasy petrolhead. My niece working with her hands. Jim gasped. Doing something productive. The family will never live this latest shame down. You'll just have to be extra useless to balance things out, Phil suggested. There's a thought, Jim said happily. Knew I could count on you. Phil. One of the reasons I never minded the fact that my dear sister married down. I thought it was because I had top-shelf booze at our wedding and made sure tea. Had she invited all her attractive unattached friends, Phil shot back. That too, Jim agreed. Well, mostly that. Remus was on his way out of the spacious Granger home when a hand the size of a shovel blade came to rest on his shoulder. Got a minute? The man attached to the massive paw asked. What do you need? Remus asked, coming face to face with a man that had been introduced to him as one of the drivers. Why don't you step into my office? The man suggested with a grin. I'm gonna make you an offer you can't refuse. The chance to get a look at Harry's bike collection proved to be irresistible to Hermione's uncle. Especially when it was coupled with a chance to spend some time with the girl. At least that was his stated reason as to why he'd chosen to accompany them back to the stately Granger estate. Hermione should be in the garage with the collection, Phil said to his brother-in-law as the car pulled to a stop. And you expect me to walk from here? Jim whined, a look of comical dismay on his face. It must be at least 50 meters, that's inhuman. Bastard, Jim growled. He leapt out of the car and stalked away. Just for that, I'm writing you out of my will again, he said over his shoulder. Come on, Harry. He'll be back with Hermione in a bit. Remus was in a daze. He had a job. A job that paid triple what he'd gotten as a professor at Hogwarts doing something he'd have happily done for free. How in the world did I get back to Grimmauld Place without splinching myself? He wondered to himself. No matter, he had work to do. First things first, he mumbled to himself. Have to get ready to speak with Bill, wards before everything else. Jim walked through the door and, by habit, stepped to the side. After a short pause to allow his eyes to adjust, he began walking towards the sounds of someone working. Where's the prettiest girl in the world? He bellowed. Uncle Jim, Hermione squealed, throwing herself into the big man's arms, ruining his saw. Vile rose suit with the grease smeared on her overalls. I thought you were out of the country on business again. When did you get back? Accidentally blew up the place I was staying in and had to calm. Back in a hurry to avoid yet another angry mob of people that didn't understand that accidents are best looked at as learning experiences, Jim explained with a much put upon sigh. You wouldn't NK cooking breakfast for yourself was so difficult, but it is. Let my example be a lesson to you that you should leave that sort of thing to the staff and never ever attempt to do it yourself. Hermione giggled. Her uncle was always joking about going to exotic place, meeting interesting people, and accidentally blowing them up. Did you bring me back anything? Have you been a good girl? He shot back. Been absolutely rotten, Hermione said proudly. It's all thanks to Harry too. He's a terrible influence. Just last year we broke into a government building and busted the place up. That's my girl, he said proudly. But that was last year. What have you done lately? Studying up on STEAM technology and blowing things up accidentally, so I'm starting to understand how all those accidents keep happening to you, she giggled. The beginning half of the year is always quiet. I don't expect things to heat up for another few months. Good. Jim filed that piece of information away into his to look into later file. He reached into his pocket and withdrew an engraved silver cigarette case. Here you go, my darling, use it in good health. What is it? Hermione asked curiously, turning the item over in her hand. Open it, he prompted. The inside of the cigarette case was filled with an assortment of saws, hooks, and other miniaturized tools. What's the map of? The area around. That school of yours on one side and the area around a small island off the coast on the other on Silk, he said easily. Replace the one it came with since you'll never go there if you've got any sense. Absolutely dull place. It also wouldn't be a good idea for anyone related to him to go near for quite some time, even with all the trouble he went to keeping his personal and professional lives separate. Why were you there, then? Hermione chirped. 'Cause I don't have any sense, he answered with a grin. Cheeky brat. Hermione's cheeks dimpled. Uncle Jim, I want you to meet my friend, Luna. Hello, the little blonde said shyly. You're the one that's helping our Hermione put together all the motorcycles. I am, sir, Luna agreed. Call me Jim. It's a pleasure to meet you, Luna. Jim gave the girl a wide grin. Mind showing them to me? The blushing girl just shook her head in reply. Come on, Uncle Jim. Hermione grabbed the man's hand and pulled him towards the garage. We'll give you the grand tour, right, Luna? Right, Luna agreed. He allowed himself to be dragged into the garage and to the skeleton of a partially assembled motorcycles. This is the latest one we've been reassembling, Hermione said proudly. A 1932 Brau Superior SS100 by God, he whispered in awe. That's the bike T.E. Lawrence managed to kill himself on. His head turned violently from side to side, glancing at and identifying several of the shadowy shapes. That's good, Hermione asked. It's bloody marvelous, Jim mumbled. This whole collection is. It's mostly Triumphs and Nortons, but by God the things he's got mixed in for flavor. 2 bloody Vincents, what kind of world just drops 2 bloody Vincents into anyone's lap? Do you know how hard I had to look to find the one I've got? He demanded. Harry's always had the strangest luck, Luna spoke up. Copious amounts of it, both good and bad unfortunately. Bloody heck, the man mumbled to himself. I think you'd better take me back into the house before my poor heart gives out. Would you like the key to wine cellar so you can get something to help recover your wits? Hermione asked. The day I need a key to get into a win. Cellar is the day I'm too drunk to open a bottle, he said with an uplifted chin. Though I wouldn't say no to the loan of that cigarette case I just gave you. Your father's likely upgraded the locks again since my last visit. Rampant snobbery. Bill nodded his head a few times as Remus explained the problem. It was a sticky one, but not beyond his skill level. Gringotts had spent years in Mount Ains of gold turning him into one of the best at what he did. Can you do it? Remus finished intently. Don't normally do this sort of thing, Bill admitted. Not to say I can't, just that it'll take me a bit longer to put them up than a professional warder would. On the other hand, I've run across a few things in my travels that most British warders have never so much as dreamed of. This place will be safe then. For you and yours, Bill agreed. It'll be a Death Eater's worst nightmare. Especially with the little addition I made that targets dark marks. Pity Dumbledore won't allow me to add it to the protections at headquarters in Hogwarts. Pity he thinks Snape is more important than the students, Remus spat. Sorry about that, he added immediately. It was uncalled for. It's Jew. Saint after hearing about Harry's mishaps, I'm just a bit on edge. It wasn't uncalled for, Bill sighed, wishing things were different. There's a reason I've been enchanting my siblings' school robes. Oh, they'll shrug off anything short of an unforgivable, Bill agreed proudly. There are ores that go into battle with less protections. Can you? I'll do the same for Harry and the girls as soon as I finish with the house. Bill promised. Thank you. Harry was in the sitting room with Hermione's parents when Jim arrived with the girls in tow. The man then proceeded to spend the next several minutes describing the collection of motorcycles. God, not another one, Anne lamented. Another what? Luna chirped. I'm afraid that collecting things is a bit of a tradition in our families, Phil laughed. I like cars. My father was fond of companies, and my grandfather liked airplanes, most of which are currently on loan to various museums at the moment. On our side, Hermione a great-great-grandfather that collected titles, weapons, and medals. Jim picked up the conversation. Bloody idiot probably clanked when he moved. From all the shrapnel he'd collected if nothing else. My father continued the tradition of collecting medals until the end of the war and liked artwork during and after. Thought it made him, well, it doesn't matter. Not since the old man's last stroke anyway. What do you collect? Harry asked. Motorcycles, Jim replied. I'm with you on that one, Harry. Also girlfriends and trouble, Anne interjected. The stories I could tell. Got a great collection of scars, Jim agreed. Motorcycle accidents, stupidity, and angry ex-girlfriends all make for an interesting patchwork. Not to mention on-the-job injuries, most of which didn't fit the aforementioned categories. Got a line of dots across my bum from a pitchfork. And a woman who was very unhappy to find him with her twin sister, something he still maintained was not his fault since how was he to have known? He'd been just as surprised as she was. Luna, Anne sighed dramatically. It looks as if the two of us are the only sane people here. my husband with his cars, my brother and Harry with their motorcycles. My daughter with her books. It's up to us to keep them from going madder than they already are. Don't listen to her, Luna, Phil advised. She's as crazy as the rest of us. Really, my wife has an impressive collection of jewelry, Phil confided. Which is still smaller than yours, Anne sighed. Not to mention the fact that I inherited most of it and that you're the one that gave me the rest of it. See how she tries to justify her neuroses. Phil whispered. Best just to humor her, Jim advised. She could snap at any moment. Ron held his breath as the woman looked over the sample. It was a testament to his state of mind that only a small fraction of his attention was captured by the way her hands were sensuously and suggestively caressing the shaft of wood he'd given her. Bit large, she said after an eternity of silence. Your hands are a bit small, Ron riposted. A hand reached up to mop the sweat off his brow. Don't match the tracing I was given at all. She was sick, the woman explained. It matters that much. Does it? Ron was so taken aback by the woman's question that he forgot his earlier nervousness. Give me your hand, without waiting for an answer. He seized her by the wrist and dragged the woman to the workbench he'd set up in his father's shed. Hold still, Ron commanded. A couple seconds later, he had a rough tracing of the woman's hand. See. What am I looking at? The one on the left is the tracing I was given. He dropped it over the one he'd just made. See how it covers your hand? Yes, she agreed. If you want it to fit, then don't send me someone else's measurements. Wouldn't send a friend to get fitted for your robes, would you? Suppose not, she agreed with a grin. How soon to get a sample in my size? Couple minutes for something rough, Ron muttered. He got no respect, absolutely no respect at all. Sit down. What kind of wood are you using? Pine, Ron replied as he tried to find the right blank. The shaft on my broomstick is made out of maple, she pointed out. Then if you want a sample in maple, you can bloody well pay for it. You want a free one, you're getting pine. All right, she settled down with a smile. I hear you play. Good enough to get on a house team but not even close to good enough to go pro, Ron agreed, surprising himself that there wasn't even a hint of bitterness in his voice. You want to scout, talk to Harry. He has the wrong set of equipment to play for my team, she giggled. Well then your team better hope to Merlin he doesn't decide to turn pro, Ron laughed back. If he does, you'll have to get used to the idea of playing to be named number 2 in the league. Harry Potter doesn't know how to lose. What do you know? She growled, a bit annoyed by the boy's superior tone. Enough to listen to Madame Hooch when she decides to share her opinion. Ron looked up from his work. Give me your hand. Really? She allowed him to seize her by the wrist again. She says that he's the finest natural flyer she's ever seen and that he's gotten better every year he's played, Ron agreed. Let me see the other. Raw talent won't take you to the top. It will when you add a bunch of private lessons with Madame Hooch, Ron retorted. Your hands are different. Injury. Bludger shattered the left and it never healed right, she agreed. Is that important? Which hand do you prefer to grip with? The left. Ron pursed his lips. Can't hold a bat with it. No, I grip with my legs and use the left hand for balance. We'll have to do something special for you then, Ron said slowly. I'm gonna need you to cast a couple charms for me. Why? 'Cause I don't feel like taking the time to do it the Muggle way and I'm still covered by the unreasonable restriction. Ron explained. Try this. Feels good, she said in delight. Fits my hand like a glove. Won't do you a whole lot of good with that hand of yours, which is why we're going to try some other things. Don't worry about it, she laughed. I've seen enough to recommend you to the others. Really? Ron's face lit up. That's great. I'd still like to try out my ideas with you though. What are you doing tomorrow, kid? Nothing important, Ron replied. Come in your gear. Why? So we can get the best fit possible. Oh, I figured it was because you had me twisted fantasy you wanted me to help you with, she teased. I do. Several actually, Ron admitted with a deep blush. Best to get the business out of the way first though. She stared at the boy, in shock for a split second before bursting into laughter. You're all right. Looked like getting a new broom would be funner than she thought it would be. After a moment to assure himself that everyone had finished with their meals, Phil nodded to his guests as everyone rose from the table. Care to join me in the study for a digestive, Harry, Jim? All right, Sir, Phil, Harry agreed. You know I never turn down free booze, Jim announced. What about that martini you sent back at my 9th birthday party? Hermione asked innocently. You wouldn't even touch it. They shook it. Which is something anyone with even an ounce, even an iota, of sense knows not to do. It ruins the drink. It doesn't count when they've ruined a drink. He raised his chin. Only 2 reasons I would ever lower my self to ordering something like that. The first is if I was doing my best to convince the world that I was an ill-bred uncultured lout aping his betters. The second is if for some reason I wanted my drink to be a bit watered down for some ungodly reason. Stir clear drinks, shake the cloudy ones. Hermione giggled at the uncharacteristic look of seriousness on her normally completely unserious uncle's face. He gave a pompous sniff. I never joke about my booze, which caused the girl to giggle uncontrollably. Would you girls care to join me in the conservatory? Anne asked. Hermione glanced over at Luna to read her friend's face. Okay, Mum. Anne smiled. Wonderful, come along girls. Jim followed his brother-in-law to the study and waited until the door was closed and locked to put a hand on Harry's shoulder. Let me tell you something, lad. The truth is, I'm impressed, I honestly am. Fact is that I'd normally applaud a man that was dating 2 women. Believe me when I say that I understand more than anyone how difficult it can be. Bad enough when you're keeping them apart, but when they know about each other, well, that brings up a whole new set of problems, doesn't it? He allowed his grip to tighten a hair and his voice dropped a couple of octaves. Problem I have with your situation is that one of the girls you're dating is my favorite niece, the apple of my eye. Would you like to know what I'd do to someone that hurt her, Harry? He'd been joking at the course, he was deadly serious now. Would you like to know what I've told everyone else? Harry asked calmly, meeting the man's eyes. No sign at all that he was the least intimidated. Jim had to admit, if only privately, that the boy had impressed him. There was no trace of fear in Harry's voice. Sign that he needed to take a serious look at what exactly was going on at his niece's school. What? The only way that Hermione will get hurt with me around is if they've got me first, Harry said firmly. And even then they're going to have to climb over a pile of their dead friends to get to her. The boy's voice hardened. Hermione's good enough to get the ones I miss. Fair enough, Jim agreed. And we're not dating, Harry added, breaking eye contact and blushing. Jim rocked the room with a great booming laugh. Whatever you say, Harry. Molly looked around the table with a satisfied smile on her face. She loved being surrounded with her husband and children. She reached out and ladled another helping of potatoes onto her youngest son's plate and added a slightly smaller one to her sole daughter's. I'm going to need your help with the gardening tomorrow, Ronald, Molly announced. So you are going to have to. Afraid I can't help out much tomorrow, Mum, Ron interrupted, shocking the table. Got a custom fitting to do. Molly's eyes flashed. Who are you fitting, Ron? Arthur asked, cutting of his wife's tantrum. One of the harpies. Starting beaters, Ron replied. He's got a bad left hand, so I think it'll take most of the day. I'll try to get done early so I can help you later, Mum. One of the harpies, Molly repeated dumbly. That put a whole new spin on things. Her son wasn't slacking off. Her darling boy was preparing for a future career. Yeah, Mum. Madam Hooch set it up. How well does it pay? She needed to make sure her baby would have enough to support himself after all. All well and good to do what you loved so long as what you loved paid your bills and allowed you keep your family comfortable. I don't know how much it'll be, Mum. He worked out a few figures. I haven't established myself yet, so I have to keep my prices low. Ronald, her tone had a bit of warning in it. Maybe 3,000 or 4,000 galleons. 3,000 galleons. She squeaked. Not that I'll see much of that since I can't do any of the enchanting myself, Ron hastened to add. Not to mention materials. Maybe a couple hundred for myself after everything is done. He scratched his chin. Maybe more, maybe less. Hermione's gonna help me figure it out later. You be sure to thank her properly, Molly said automatically, still in shock from the numbers her son had casually thrown out. Neville woke up early and spent the next few hours enduring the preparations for the day's party in better cheer than he usually did. He wouldn't be alone, that thought boosted him immensely. He might even be able to use Harry and the others as an excuse to ignore the usual half-wits that his grandmother's guests brought with them. He drifted through the rest of the day. Why in a daze until the house elves finally announced the arrival of his friends. Neville flashed a quick smile at Harry and the girls as his gran made a more formal greeting. Neville, why don't you show Mr. Potter and his companions to the veranda while I continue my discussion with Mrs. Granger, Augusta ordered. Yes, Gran, Neville agreed quickly. This way, guys. He hadn't realized that the two women had started a conversation. I'm glad you came, Neville added as soon as he was sure they were out of earshot. She squeaked in shock as Ron's hands inadvertently brushed against another sentence. ITIVE area and again when he grabbed her by the thigh and rearranged things to his satisfaction. You know, she began trying desperately to keep her voice steady. I usually expect dinner and a drink. Before letting myself be manhandled like this. What? Ron glanced up from his work. You say something. Or at the very least an introduction, she continued. Do you even know my name? Mandy Maxwell, starting left side beater. Been in the league for 2 years, considered a shoe-in for the national team in the next World Cup, Ron recited. Favorite color is red, favorite food is human hearts. Enjoys long walks on the beach and beating men to death. Favorite color is green, favorite food is chips with a lot of malt vinegar. I do enjoy long walks on the beach but prefer sitting under trees and listening to nature. Our public relations folks came up with the answers you gave. Guess you can't trust everything you read after all. Ron developed a wicked grin. Gonna have to remember to tell a friend of mine. I'm sure. Mandy smiled at the boy. She wasn't that much older than he was. Couple years didn't matter too much, especially not when one considered the average magic user's lifespan. It was something to consider anyway. Now all we need to do is, no, guess that won't work. Maybe if we, Ron frowned in concentration. Wait here. Ron strode out of his workshop and towards the garden in search of his mother. Finished already? Molly asked. Need your help with something, Mum, Ron replied. Can't cast any charms myself yet and I don't think she'll be able to and hold on at the same time. What do you need me to do? Levitation charms, Ron explained. I need you to levitate my blank so that I can make sure my customer gets a good fit. All right, Molly agreed. She was curious to see what her baby boy was doing in the shed anyway. Just give me a couple minutes to clean up. Harry was awestruck at the view the veranda on Neville's house afforded. Its place on top of the hill dominated the countryside and gave a commanding view of acres and acres of farmers' fields to the east and a wood that looked as if it rivaled the Forbidden Forest to the west. Hermione and Luna, less so. Verbally much less so. What's that little house down there for? Hermione demanded. Is it your guest house? The girl just couldn't understand why they'd spoil the view with such an eyesore. The ugly thing was just the sort of crass shack that new money would slap together in some pathetic attempt to show how important they thought they were. That's where Malfoy lives, Neville said sourly. That? Hermione asked incredulously. That? But it's so tiny and tacky. As pompous as he is, I'd have expected something impressive, not that. Hermione's garden shed is bigger than that thing is. Harry added cheerfully. What? Neville gave his friend an odd look, trying to determine if the other boy was joking or telling the truth. Don't listen to him, Neville, Hermione said quickly. My garden shed isn't even half the size of Malfoy's house. Yes it is, Harry argued. Neither teen noticed the sizable crowd of eavesdroppers they'd gathered. It's not as tall, but it covers a lot more space. Quote, which building are you talking about, Harry? Hermione bit her lower lip. The one behind your father's garage, Harry replied. Hermione's eyes lit up. Ah, those are the old stables. Not the garden shed, she explained. Sorry about the confusion, Neville, she said contritely. My garden shed is maybe a third the size of Malfoy's house if that. The girl's smile widened. Much less tacky. Though, she added after a suitable pause. Though that isn't a high bar to reach. No problem, Neville said with a wide toothy grin. He couldn't wait until the slights, both intentional and unintentional, reached the Malfoy family. Just how big, he caught himself. Never mind, please forgive my slip. I didn't hear a thing, Hermione said politely. Why are the Malfoys so close to you? Harry asked. The Normans invaded and set up a siege camp. The castle didn't fall and they never left. Pity the sewer no longer drained into their front yard. I hadn't realized Malfoy's family was that old, Hermione said, a bit impressed that the boy's boasts had any substance at all. It isn't, Neville said quickly, a bit embarrassed to have to be the one to explain things. The current Malfoy family bought the property about 100 years ago. They claim to be from the branch of the original Malfoy family that had never left France, but, Neville shrugged. You don't think so? I've read some of my ancestors' journals dealing with the time, Neville agreed. They mention the fact that Altus Malfoy bore a strong resemblance to a Jacques Roux, Beauxbaton's class of 1880, Muggleborn. That doesn't make any sense, Hermione said in confusion. Malfoy's always talking about how pure he is. She shook her head. The young families are usually the ONES that feel they have something to prove, Neville said gently, hoping he wasn't going to offend one of the guests that were eavesdropping on the conversation he was having with Hermione. The older ones tend not to be so worried about little things or to act like they need to prove something. How long has your family been here, Neville? Luna asked cautiously. An unbroken line of my bloods. Been on this spot since before the Romans got here, Neville announced proudly. So there's been a Longbottom on this spot for more than 2,000 years, Hermione said softly, more than a bit impressed by that bit of trivia. No, Neville said quickly, a bit distressed by the confusion his poor explanations were causing. The Longbottom family has been here about 300 years. John Longbottom married Angela Bellicis and the Bellicis family had no sons and that's why I'm a Longbottom and that's why I'm here. I can't remember what family the Bellicises married into. Molly was more a bit mystified by everything her youngest son had asked her to do. First he'd had her levitate the stick he'd been carving, then he'd had the woman climb onto it, and now he was asking her to turn the stick upside down. Need to make sure she can hold on, Mum, Ron explained quickly. Give her a couple bounces if she does. Please, the woman added. Faster, Ron demanded. And rougher. Hats. Mandy bit her tongue before she could add the words. My line, probably not the best thing to say in front of his mother. Perfectly fine, she covered. Better to fall off 2 feet above the ground than 200. If you're sure, Molly agreed. How is it? Ron demanded. Much better than the broom I've got now, Mandy enthused. How soon can you modify the one I've got? Might be bet. Care to build a new one from scratch with all the work we gotta do cause of your hand, Ron demurred. Freeze it, Mum. Molly was scandalized by the way her son walked over to the woman and began cavil. Irely doing things with his hands in places no gentleman had any business. Ronald, could you hand me that pencil by you, Mum? Ron interrupted. I need to get these marks in so I can make some adjustments. What? Molly asked dumbly. Pretend he's a tailor, Mandy advised. You know how it is when you're getting a new robe fitted. It's the same thing here. I suppose, Molly sighed. The thing she put up with for the sake of her children. Problem? Augusta asked mildly. I seem to have misplaced my husband, Anne admitted. I do apologize, he's never been too fond of social gatherings. Probably hiding in some out-of-the-way corner. I'll have security run him down later. His upbringing not prepare him for gatherings of this sort? Augusta asked cautiously, not wanting to offend. It did. I'm afraid that it's his nature that's getting in the way here. She smiled fondly. He's always been a bit shy around crowds. I see. Augusta nodded. I would have never guessed it judging by how he dresses. New money, you understand. Oh, my husband's family were mostly merchants until about 300 years ago when they started building up enough of a fortune to be considered significant. Anne said with a dismissive wave. I think my mother traced them back to the 1600s before she got bored or something like that. I haven't bothered to commission a genealogist to look into it, though I suppose I should at some point. Really? Augusta said in surprise. Why did she do that? She hadn't thought that sort of thing was important to Muggles. My mother, stepmother I should say, was a horrible snob and more than a bit disgusted that I was marrying, below my station, instead of catching Lord Inbred V like she wanted, Anne giggled. Certainly anged her tune when she realized that he could buy and sell our family with pocket change. Then again she always was a bit of a gold digger. I always maintained that Daddy never should have married her. Not that I was ever asked for my opinion on the matter. I understand, Augusta laughed. My elder brother did something similar. I'm just glad that my husband is more sensible than that, Anne sniffed. As was mine. If there was one time he showed good judgment, it was when he chose his wife, Augusta pronounced severely. The two women maintained their serious expressions for a few seconds before dissolving into laughter. What about your family? You said your husband comes from a line of merchants and that your mother was a snob, Augusta prompted. What sort of family did you come from? Molly watched in fascination as Ron carved the broomstick blank. She'd never seen this side of her son, never expected him to put much effort into anything until he was hit by reality. Forced to become a responsible member of society. Interesting, isn't it? The other woman's voice brought Molly back to reality. I'm sorry. Interesting, isn't it? Mandy repeated. The way he gets so focused. I've never seen him like this, Molly confessed. Would you like something to drink? Or I suppose I could get you some snacks. I'm fine, Mandy said quickly. My trainer would murder me if I broke her carefully constructed diet. You're on a diet. Molly's face showed disbelief. As thin as you are. It's more about strength and endurance than it is about losing weight, she explained. Would you mind if I spent more time here? Take as much time as you'd like, dear, Molly said brightly. We want your new broomstick to fit perfectly, don't we? Molly's smile widened. Not at all, dear, not at all. Phil had a smile on his face when he rejoined his wife and daughter. He'd have never thought a magical party could be so potentially profitable, just went to show that people were the same and that magic mattered not a whit. Have a good conversation with your friends, darling. He drawled. Yes, Daddy, Hermione agreed. Did you enjoy yourself, Mum? Neville had been so shocked when his gran spent the majority of the party conversing with only one guest. I did, darling. Augusta and I have been talking and you'll never guess what we've determined, Anne said to her daughter. What's that, Mum? Hermione asked. You and Neville are cousins on my side, Augusta said with a faint smile. Well, distant ones anyway. I think we figured it was 500 years since any of us have had a common ancestor, Anne added. I'd have to go through the books to be sure. Still, it's very interesting, isn't it? Augusta gave the Grangers a measured look. Very interesting indeed. You throw a lovely party, Augusta. You simply must allow us to host you some time, Anne demanded as she shrugged into her coat. After that, I would love to get a chance to introduce you to society. I would love the chance to be introduced, Augusta agreed. Thank you for the invitation, Anne. Shall we pencil something in after classes resume? We'll work out the details later, Anne agreed. Have a good evening. Augusta, have a good night, Anne. Sheer luck. Luna noticed an odd expression on her friend's face as they shrugged out of their formal attire and changed back in to their much more comfortable everyday clothing. Is something bothering you, Hermione? I'm just a bit confused at how readily Neville's grandmother was to admit that they had muggles in the family tree, Hermione stated. I didn't think that was the sort of thing purebloods would do in a public setting. I had this image of her of a strict proper old dame that would invite us to show that she as a proper progressive sort and to put a thumb in Malfoy's eye and be polite, but I don't know, it sounds absolutely awful when I say it out loud. Why ever would she not? Luna asked, blinking at her friend. You heard what Neville said. The truly pure families tend not to put much stock in such things. Every pureblood family has muggles in their family tree. In my case, for example, my most recent are my great-grandfather Orville's parents, Jenny and Sigerson homes on my mother's side. Claiming only magical human ancestors is generally only something the new families care about with a few notable exceptions. Such as the Blacks. Most of whom mostly died out during the war, again, such as the Blacks. What about the Weasleys then? Ron said they've got a cousin who's an accountant that they don't talk about. Hermione frowned. Mrs. Weasley is a bit condescending about muggles, but she's got her heart in the right place and Mr. Weasley is absolutely fascinated by them and they don't talk about a member of their family just because he's a squib. Some families do think that squibs are shameful since it implies that the family has weak magic and that can be detrimental to their social standing, Luna allowed. But I know the Weasleys aren't the type that would care too much about either social standing or the fact that a family member was a squib. If I were to guess, I would Say that there are reasons they don't talk about that cousin aside from their job or possible lack of magic. What reasons could anyone possibly have to disown a family? Hermione's mouth snapped shut and she reddened in embarrassment as several examples came to mind. Yes, I may have remembered several family members on both sides that I may not be entirely pleased about being related to, the girl admitted. Between the two of us, it's also possible that I might have a couple former aunts and a former grandmother that are no longer mentioned in polite company or using polite terms. Emus watched as Bill finished layering the initial wards over the Granger estates. What was supposed to have been a 30-minute job had turned into a grueling 6-hour endurance test. That's the first bit, Bill gasped. He collapsed into the nearest chair, an antique that likely cost more than he made in a decade, and tried to blink the spots out of his eyes. Be able to add the next bit the day after tomorrow. You said it would take 30 minutes, Remus pointed out, and had been quite insistent that he knew what he was talking about even after the last of the marauders had tried to expel Ain just how big a job he was about to take on. You didn't say how bloody big this place is, Bill retorted. If I'd have known. Bill shook his head. Warding a castle is a bloody big job, you know. You didn't want to listen. Remus laughed. They've got another house in London they'll want done later, he announced. Not to mention the school robes and the Granger wardrobe and likely a dozen other odds, ends, and locations. All this warding going to cause you trouble with them. They hired me to break wards, not make them. The goblins could care less how many wards I put up. Be another story if I was taking them down. He added. You owe me a beer for this. I'll get you two, Remus promised. I can do this about 2 months before I have to choose between going back to work and eating my shoes. Should be able to get the house secure in that time. Not sure about the grounds and I'm not going to make any promises about the second house. You do know that you're being paid for this, don't you? Really? Bill grinned, perking up. 6 months before I have to go back to work or tender my resignation. How much faster would things go if you had some help? Depends on the help, Bill replied. Give me a list of names. Both men turned to watch the Granger's car pull up the drive. That's another thing I should slap wards on, Bill said thoughtfully. Don't want them to be defenseless when they're on the move. I'll have a talk with their security people, Remus agreed. Tonks made a quick scan of the room before stepping aside to let her charge through after Dieter. Eyeing that there were no obvious threats. All clear, boss. Are you going to tell me about the offer you got from the Granger security people? Amelia asked as she took a seat. You know about that, Amelia smiled. I know everything. That's why I'm the director. Yes, boss. Was planning to tell you, just not sure how to bring it up. You going to take it? I don't know, boss. I like working for you, but then there's all the other bastards in the department, Yeah, that. Tonks sighed. And the fact that they're offering to double my pay. What do you think I should do, boss? I think you should take the job and let me put you down as working a confidential undercover assignment, Amelia replied. 2 paychecks for 1 job. You want me to spy on the Grangers? I want a backchannel to a family that will soon have as many armsmen as the ministry, Amelia corrected. It won't bother me at all if the Grangers know you're still working for me. Makes sense, Tonks admitted. Makes even more sense when you know that the ministry rejected my latest request to expand, Amelia growled. Even after they've admitted that you know who is back. Even then. I can activate a few on the reserve roles and I can ramp up training. But I am expressly forbidden from inducting new members of the Auror Corps than is traditionally authorized. Gonna expand the training class and feed the extras to the Grangers. Something like that, Amelia agreed with a smirk. Neville came down to breakfast to find his gran already sitting at the table surrounded by several stacks of parchments. You'll never guess what I've found, Neville, the old woman announced. What is it, Gran? If my research is correct, which it nearly always is, your friend Hermione is descended, on her mother's side, from the Primus Pilus of the Legio XX Valeria, who retired with a local wife after 38 years of service. One which her contacts assured her was from a very good family. They were still trying to run down all the details. A man of that same line stood beside Arthur in the defense of Britannia against the invading Saxons. Augusta smiled tightly. The family's fortunes have ebbed and flowed since then. But the male line has never been broken. Neville's eyes were wide in shock. I didn't know that it was possible for Muggles to trace that sort of thing. I had to order record searches with Hogwarts, the Goblins, and the Ministry, Augusta explained. A lucky thing her family has produced the odd magic user over the centuries, or I may not have been able to discover what I did. The old woman gave her grandson a measured "Gran," Neville sputtered. Still, you did well to befriend her. The old woman continued, seemingly ignoring her grandson's discomfort. Very well indeed. Since the girl herself is unavailable, perhaps I could ask Anne to match you with one of Hermione's cousins. Murgle. Augusta's smile broke as Neville fled the room with a look of horror on his face. Still not a bad idea. Even if I did mean it in jest, she mused. It would be good to inject a bit of new blood into the Longbottom line, especially if that blood was of the right sort. Luna's lower lip was quivering as she prepared to leave the Granger estates. It had been so nice to spend every day with friends. Goodbye, Hermione. She threw herself into the other girl's arms. I will see you again after Boxing Day. See you in a couple days, Luna, Hermione replied. Goodbye, Harry. Luna cautiously hugged the boy. I will see you soon. Have fun spending Christmas with your father, Harry replied. No, it's not a very long trip to the place Father is picking me up. In later life, Harry would always treasure the memory of his first real Christmas, the first time he could remember feeling like he was part of a family during the holiday season. Perhaps I should have accepted the Weasleys' invitations to spend Christmas with them, he thought regretfully. Then I'd have been able to experience this earlier. Hermione had woken him as the sun was painting the sky red and demanded that he join her under the tree, insisting that she couldn't wait for him to open his gift a minute longer. I hope you like it, Harry, Hermione offered with a shy blush. Professor McGonagall helped me pick it out. Harry carefully opened the box and his breath caught when he saw what was inside. You never replaced the one you broke in the tournament, and I thought it was time you had a new one so you didn't have an excuse to be late for class, Hermione prattled. Do you like it? Yes, Harry agreed, staring at the platinum-cased pocket watch in the box. I like it very much, thank you. Hermione's smile lit up the room. I was hoping you would. Mind if I take a look, Harry? Phil asked. Sure, Harry agreed, mindful of the expectant look on his daughter's face. The head of the Granger family resolved to find something favorable to say no matter what his true opinions may be. He was pleasantly surprised by what he found. Hamilton. A smile bloomed on the man's face. These were some of the best watches to be had when they made them. Shame digitals took over the market. Even greater shame the American watch industry had disappeared. Be good for the Swiss to have a bit of real competition in the mechanical market. It's also charmed to be almost indestructible, Hermione supplied. It has to be to survive around Harry. Harry opened his mouth but the protest died in his throat before he said a word. Depressing as it was, the girl had made a fair assessment. Thank you, Harry. Hermione tore off the paper to reveal a tube of fitted lacquered bamboo slats capped at each end with darkly glazed porcelain figures. It's a portable writing desk from China, Harry explained. One cap is an inkwell, and the other holds brushes and quills. How does it work? Hermione asked curiously. Pull out the caps, Harry instructed. The girl complied, causing her gift to unroll to create a floating platform. It'll store 500 sheets of parchment and hold up to 50 pounds. You can also move it and the caps to wherever you want and they'll stay floating wherever you place them, Harry explained. Oh, and the inkwell is charmed so that it will never spill. How many quills and brushes does it hold? Hermione was entranced. 5 brushes, 2 dozen quills, or 7 fountain pens. I had them put a mix in to start with, Harry replied. Do you like it? I love it, Hermione exclaimed, wrapping her friend in a hug. Thank you so much, Harry. Hedwig will be happy to hear that, Harry said with a grin. It took her almost 2 days of hard flying to get it. I'll be sure to thank her then too, Hermione giggled. How do I close it up again? Just roll it up. They spent the next couple hours opening gifts and marveling over each other's new possessions, most notable of which was a silver lighter Harry received from Hermione's Uncle Jim along with a note explaining each of the object's 82 functions and a fancy new fountain pen Hermione got from her former governess which, the woman had explained, was nearly indestructible and heavy. Lee enchanted with tracking and protection charms. Hermione sat in surrounded by the shattered remains of the packaging and wrapping, looking around to see if she had missed anything. The girl was beginning to develop a faintly puzzled look. Entirely due to the fact that there wasn't anything left of the pile of gifts and she hadn't yet opened anything from her parents. Before we forget, Phil said, there's one thing left. But it's a bit big for the drawing room. Harry blinked twice, glancing around the large and decidedly opulent room. What the? It's just out in the stable yard. Anne said. Come along now. Increasingly puzzled, the children followed Hermione's parents out to the manor's courtyard. Here they were presented by a quite peculiar sight, a low-loader trailer for an articulated lorry. With a tarpaulin-wrapped object the size of a very large car, or small bus sat upon it and tied up with a red ribbon. It was Hermione's turn to blink bemusedly. She cautiously approached the tarps, noted the tag marked, "To Hermione, love Mum and Dad," and pulled the edge of one up to peer beneath. She then promptly froze, her eyes going about the size of frisbees, and blinked several times. Phil smirked, and yanked a specific rope. There was a twang, and a couple of sharp tugs on the tarps had them slithering off to reveal a rust-dotted, sooty, oil-streaked metal beast. It was Ab, out the smallest full-sized steam engine Harry had ever seen. About 20 feet long with 4 chunky wheels and a hefty squared-off water tank, from the top of which a stubby funnel protruded, shrouding its boiler. It had once been painted royal blue with bright red details here and there, though that was fairly hard to see through the dirt and streaks of rust, and the paint was kinda faded. "Merry Christmas, Hermione," Phil said. Hermione, for her part, was still rooted to the spot. "It's ex-coal board. Anne provided. We had a dickens of a time tracking it down." Hermione was still rooted to the spot. Her parents were just sharing a concern was this a mistake look when she produced the most extraordinarily girlish squeak Harry had ever heard from her and went madly scrambling up into the aging engine's cab, wherein she spent nearly a minute poking around before, with another squeak, zooming out and latching onto both her parents at once while gabbling on her gratitude at about 1,000 miles a minute. Harry went over and had a closer look at the engine, in particular the oval brass plate on the side of its cab. It had Andrew Barclay Sons & Co., arching over the top, Kilmarnock, looping round the bottom. And Limited, Caledonia Works, No 1836. 1,924 feet in descending order in the middle. It didn't make much sense, but he figured Hermione would be all too happy to explain it. Wait, had Hermione's parents just given her a real steam engine? Does it work? He asked, frankly not quite believing what he was seeing. Of course, Phil said, sounding like that was a silly question. The chap who showed me it said it's sorely needing maintenance, but he had it running while I was there. Hermione let out yet another delighted squeak. At this point, speech seemed to be completely beyond her. Harry looked back at the engine, and said the only thing he could think of to say. Wow, it took almost 4 hours to pry Hermione away from her new engine and to the breakfast table, and even then. The soot-covered girl kept casting longing gazes out the window at her new treasure, her precious. Hermione, stop being rude, Anne scolded. I know I had the maids raise you better than that. She finished with an amused grin directed at her husband. Sorry, Mum, Hermione mumbled, it's just, her right-hand valve gear is sticking, half of her boiler tubes are punctured, and her left-hand big end bearing is shot, and I've only got 2 weeks before I go back to Hogwarts. Don't worry about that, Phil laughed. I've got it all taken care of. Picked up a piece of land, an old coal mine with plenty of track. Near that school of yours. Should have a spur line to Hogwarts finished shortly after you get back to school. Thank you, Daddy, Hermione chirped. Thank the tax break I was able to arrange and all the good publicity I'm going to get with the locals for bringing in a few jobs, Phil replied. Be good and I might even be able to arrange a couple more engines Oh, keep the one outside from getting too lonely. Being good means we clean the soot off before coming to the table, Anne interjected. I don't want to see so much of a speck of it on you when you're at the table again. Hermione stood up with her chin in the air. If you will excuse me, Mother, I am in dire need of a bath. We shall wait for you to finish before we start breakfast. Phil checked his watch. Better make that lunch. Molly was shocked to the core when she noticed that her youngest son had not come in for lunch. It wasn't like the boy to miss a meal. Where's Ronald? She asked. In the shed, Arthur replied. Do you want me to get him? I'll do it, Molly said. She walked outside and was mystified by the odd contraption her boy was fiddling with. Mum, good timing, Ron cheered. Could you make this spin? What is it? Molly asked. It's a lathe, Ron replied. You see, the wood spins here and I can use it to turn a new beater's bat. Finished with the broom, then. It's at Nimbus being enchanted. Ron agreed. The Harpies have some sort of deal with the company, which was fortunate in that it meant his profit margin was going to be much higher than expected. That's nice, Molly mumbled. Come inside, I'll enchant your lathe after we eat. Whatever it is, we can deal with it after lunch. Hermione's Uncle Jim arrived shortly after they'd persuaded the girl to clean herself up, and shortly before they sat down to eat lunch and deposited a package in Harry's lap with strict instructions to tear it open immediately. Never pass up an opportunity for a free meal. Both your stomach and your bank account will be richer for it, the big man explained. How'd you like that lighter, Harry? He added upon seeing that the boy had opened his gift. Quite a bit, Harry replied. Good. Picked it up from an American chap I sometimes work with and figured that you'd have more use for it than I do. What is your work? Harry blurted. If you don't mind my asking. I'm a glorified cleaner, Hermione's Uncle Jim explained. When there's a mess my employers send me in to take care of it. They also use me as a distraction sometimes. I'm high profile anew. That the opposition focuses on me when I'm in the area and that lets my colleagues do their jobs without too much bother. Why do you ask? Just curious where you got all those gadgets you gave Hermione, Harry replied. I've never seen anything like them in any stores. Friend of mine makes them for me, he laughed. Different friend than the one that made your new lighter. Someone in his line of work that occasionally worked for the American government. One of the rare freelancers in the business. Oh, Uncle Jim. Look what Harry got me, Hermione yelled, rushing down the stairs. He demonstrated how to use her new portable desk. Interesting, the man agreed. Anyway, you could get more of these, Harry. Yeah, Harry agreed dumbly. You know about magic. I know about a lot of things, Jim said mysteriously. Wait here a moment, Harry asked. He rushed up the stairs and came back a few minutes later with a box that looked like it was painted with rainbow vomit. Merry Christmas. Thank you, Harry, Uncle Jim said, taking the box. He carefully opened the box and began to laugh. What's all this? Magical gadgets, Harry replied. Got a couple mates from school that make them. Just read the directions first or you might accidentally turn yourself into something. You're giving him something you got from the twins, Hermione hissed. Harry, you know they wouldn't be able to resist booby-trapping it. It's me, so they won't do anything, Harry replied. But I've got an agreement with them, trust me, Harry said, placing a hand on her shoulder. It'll be fine, I promise. I trust you, Harry, Hermione assured him. Since that's all settled, let's eat, Jim said loudly. Ron gulped down his meal and rushed back to the shed, only to return a few minutes later with a deep blush. Mum, I'll be out in a minute, Ron, Molly agreed. Thanks, Mum, Ron replied. I'll be waiting. The boy rushed back out. What does he need? Arthur asked. He needs me to enchant a lake. Something to spin, Molly replied. He's making a new beater's bat for his friend in the Harpies. Oh, Arthur smiled. He hasn't grown tired of making Quidditch stuff yet. Good. Glad the boys found a trade that'll keep him out of the ministry. Arthur, the ministry is no place for anyone, Arthur said firmly. It's a steady paycheck and that's all. I suppose, Molly agreed. She looked over at Fred and George. That doesn't mean I don't still expect you two to do your best and pass your newts. Leaving Hogwarts is no excuse to not get them. It just makes things a bit harder. Even if you do decide to keep that joke shop of yours, I want you to have something else to fall back on. Okay, Mum, whatever you say. That means if your scores are high, I won't say anything about the research you two do in your room, Molly added. She stood up. I also expect you two to leave your siblings alone, do that and we won't have any problems. Deal, Mum, the twins agreed. Molly walked outside to join her youngest son in the shed. What do you need me to do? Just make this piece spin, Mum, Ron replied. All right, Molly agreed. She watched in fascination as the boy used a chisel shape a beater's bat from the chunk of wood. Slow it down a bit, Mum, Ron asked. All right, Molly agreed. What are you doing now? Sanding it smooth, Ron replied. Then I'm going to take it off the lathe and sand it again and again and again till I'm satisfied. After that, Molly prompted. After that, I'm going to freehand the handle, sand it to the right shape if I need to. Rub a few coats of boiled linseed oil onto the bat, wrap the handle with sharkskin and I'll be finished. Why are you using sharkskin? Grip. No one else does it but there's no rule against it. Ron clapped his hands to remove some of the sawdust. Madam Hooch says duelers like to use it on their wands, figured I'd try it here. Can't hurt and might be the start of a trend. Did you do that on the broom you made? Nah. I checkered grips on the broom. Can't do it on the bat cause of league rules, Ron explained. And we're done with the first bit, thanks, Mum. Happy to help, Ron. Molly said with a smile. Hermione spent almost every waking moment of the next day poring over her new toy and chattering excitedly about what she and Luna were going to do with it. Her mother was visibly and verbally not amused. I am sorry about all this, Harry, Anne sighed. I wish I could say she got this madness from her father's side but I'm afraid mine's also been known to get a bit obsessive with things. It's all right, Harry laughed. She's the same way at school. I'm just happy she's got something to distract her from dragging me into it. Give it another day and she'll remember you exist again, Anne replied with a smirk. The woman promised herself that she'd take measures if her daughter didn't remember at least some of the etiquette lessons that had been drilled into her unwilling skull. Give it another day and Luna will be here to distract her, Harry retorted. They'll feed each other's madness in a never-ending loop of insanity and I'll be safe. True to Harry's prediction, Luna arrived early the next morning and was immediately drawn towards Hermione's newest and favorite possession. The two girls spent the entire morning happily chattering at each other and poking into every one of the engine's many nooks and crannies. They were both covered head to toe in grease when Anne finally managed to drag them away from the locomotive to take lunch. Clean and get down here, Anne said shortly. But we'll just get dirty again, Mum, Hermione tried, hoping to get back to the engine as soon as possible. It'd be more efficient to just get a couple sandwiches to eat outside. That way we'll keep my promise to you to keep it away from the table while still maximizing our time working on the engine. I think you'll find it makes the most sense if you think about it, Mum. You are not just going to get dirty again because you are not going to mess with your train until tomorrow, the woman said firmly. And tomorrow, you will be freshly shed and sitting at the table before lunch or you will not be messing with the train for the remainder of the holiday. Do you understand me, Hermione? But, Mum, It was a simple question, Anne interrupted. One with two possible answers. Yes or no. Do I have to ask it again? No, Mum. Well, she prompted. I understand, Mum, Hermione agreed. Good. Now hurry up and get washed. Yes, Mum, Hermione sighed. Come on, Luna. Right behind you, Hermione, Luna agreed. See you at lunch, Mrs. Granger. Call me, Anne, Luna. All right, Luna agreed before falling into step behind Hermione. What are we gonna do now, Luna? Hermione whined. She wanted to get back to her engine, her precious research, Luna chirped. You said we'd have an opportunity to play with the engine after we get back to Hogwarts. On the other hand, your library is not something we'll have access to when we're back at Hogwarts. You're right, Hermione sighed. It's just, I know, Luna agreed. Anne walked into the dining room, took her place, closed her eyes, and rubbed her temples. People said that children were just as bad as their parents had been at a similar age. Oh, how she wished there weren't any truth to that statement. Sure to drag Hermione away from her new toy? Phil asked innocently. Both sides, I think. He turned to Harry. You've got my sympathies, Harry, having to deal with it all year. She's not usually this bad, Harry laughed. Still, I'm going to have a long talk with that girl if this keeps up, Anne promised. A very long talk. The three of them made small talk until they were joined by a freshly bathed and dressed Hermione and Luna. Let me see your fingernails, Anne ordered. All clean, Hermione said. See. Sparkling, Anne agreed. How do you manage that so fast? Luna brought some soap that works wonders, Hermione replied. Good job, Luna, Anne said with a grin. Thank you. Luna blushed a deep red. Father uses it after he has to mainta. In the press, and I figured if it works for father, it should work for us too. Molly watched as her son carefully shaved sliver after sliver from the handle of the newly made beater's bat. Why are you being so careful? She asked after he'd paused for a moment. I want it to fit her hand perfectly, Ron replied. The big companies don't bother with this sort of custom work, but I think there's nay in it, so. He shrugged his shoulders. Besides, I wanted to do something nice for her. And if that something nice gets you a bit of free advertising, what's the harm in that? Molly giggled. Good boy. I try, Mum. You get it from your uncles, Molly said. My brothers were always looking for an angle that would net them a galleon or two. Ron cracked his neck. Good to know. Pity he hadn't been able to meet them. What are you going to do next? Going to rough it up so the sharkskin has something to stick to. Then I'm going to wrap it, Ron replied. I'll need your help with the sticking charms. Of course, Molly agreed. Are there any other charms you need me to cast on it? There's a few, Ron admitted. Wasn't going to trouble you with them. Was it because you didn't want to bother me, or because you have someone else that could do them better? The first, Mum. League doesn't allow anything complicated, so each of the charms gets removed and recast before each match. Point them out to me so I have time to practice them, Molly ordered. It's usually a good idea to test things before letting them out into the world. Sure thing, Mum, Ron agreed. Good idea. Luna walked into Anne's study with a pensive look on her face. She really hoped that the woman would be willing to help. She so rarely got an opportunity to solicit advice from an adult female. What is it, Luna? Anne asked. Can I ask you a few things? Luna asked hopefully. Sure, Anne agreed. Have a seat. It's just, I was reading through some of Hermione's books and it's all so confusing. All right, Anne prompted. Well, is it true that Phil found Harry hiding in the stables with the horses? It wasn't a surprise that the boy had made himself scarce, not after his prediction about tea. He girls feeding each other's madness had turned out to be accurate. Trying to avoid my daughter? He asked with a grin. Trying to get to know the ponies so there's a bit of trust built up before the next polo game, Harry replied. The fact that this allows me to coincidentally avoid getting caught up in Hermione's madness is a bonus. Speaking of polo, you up for a game in a day or two? Phil asked hopefully. Sure, Harry agreed. Whenever. Wonderful, I'll leave you to it then. Phil walked out of the stables and back to the house and the madness it contained. Anne had a dazed smile as her conversation with Luna wound down. The things the little blonde had wanted to know and the details she'd been curious about were a bit more earthy than she'd expected. Let me have a word with your father, Anne offered. With his permission, I will do my utmost to answer every question you have. Okay, Luna agreed. Thank you, Anne. Happy to help, Luna, Anne said warmly. After she was sure the girl was gone. She threw open the door that connected her study with her husband's. I just had the most interesting conversation with young Luna, Anne announced as she walked into Phil's office. Oh, she got into Hermione's romances, Anne said simply. I thought those were all for the maids and any that may have slipped into our daughter's stack of reading material by accident, and no. Certainly not by intention, and that we had best just put them out of our minds and that she would be sure they were correctly filed in the future and there was no need to trouble ourselves about them, Phil said dryly. Repeating his daughter's stuttered excuses. Because our daughter would never dream of reading something so frightfully common and so completely devoid of literary or educational merit as an upstairs-downstairs romance novel. That's the story we're supposed to believe anyway, Anne agreed. So what did she want to ask you? She wanted to know if it was true that powerful men kept a girl on the side. Anne replied. She then asked if Harry was powerful enough. What? He choked. Seems that she's more than a bit terrified that she'll lose her friends and was wondering if becoming his mistress might be a way to keep hold of them, Anne said softly. Poor thing got really worked up about it when I talked to her and I got the impression that Harry and Hermione were her only friends in the world. And I admitted that my grandfather had a friend on the side. Then I made it a point to tell her that my grandmother did her very best to pretend that the other woman didn't exist. She said that wasn't how it worked in the book, and then the conversation got a bit personal. Anne giggled. All I'll say is that she's a very imaginative girl and Hermione has some very smutty upstairs-downstairs romances. Master of the house with the maid while the mistress is tumbling a stable boy, that sort of thing. She made a mental note to embarrass her daughter with a conversation about the aforementioned novels at some point in the future. I trust that things are taken care of, Phil said hopefully. I've convinced her that her friends aren't going anywhere and any talk of marriage or other arrangements should wait until they were all well out of school, Anne reported. To be honest, I'm fairly sure that she had no idea what a friend on the side did. I'm almost certain she didn't understand what the books had to say about the matter, just that it would give her a chance to stay with the others, which was something she knew she badly wanted to do. I see. I'm going to have a talk with her father, Anne continued. If that pans out the way I hope it does, I'm going to have a long conversation with Luna about the ways of the world. And she was going to be sure Hermione was included in that conversation whether the girl liked it or not, and not just because it gave her a chance to embarrass the girl over her choice of smutty reading material. Have fun with that, Phil laughed. Have fun with Harry, Anne retorted. What? I'm going to have a talk with the girls, Anne explained. While I do that, you be sure to answer any questions Harry might have. I'll be sure to let him know that I'm here, Phil promised. Though I think it'd be in the lad's best interests if I pointed him to your elder brother. Only if you want him to bed the girls in his school and half the teachers by the end of the year, Anne giggled. I'm not the one that would have to deal with the paternity suits. You're the one that would have to deal with Hermione's broken heart, Anne retorted. Which would certainly result from getting that sort of talk from my brother. I'll take care of things with Harry, you go use the fire to talk with Luna's father, Phil replied. Privately agreeing with his wife's statement. I'll let you know how things go. You do that, he agreed. Anne walked downstairs, tossed a handful of flow powder into the fire, and prepared for what she feared would be a difficult conversation. It wasn't. Luna's father, it turned out, was almost pathetically grateful to have a woman available to steer his daughter through difficult curves, explaining that while he'd done his best, he really had no idea of how to raise a daughter or a son for that matter. Poor man was completely lost without his dear departed wife. Look at the time, Anne said suddenly, hoping to end a conversation that had gotten much too personal. I'm afraid I really must go. If you must, Luna's father agreed. Again, I must thank you for what you're doing for my little Luna. Happy to help. Luna's almost one of the family at this point. Goodbye, he said. Bye. The flames flared once before going back to normal. I am never going to get used to that, she muttered to herself. Her head swiveled around till she found one of the servants. Could you please have the girls meet me at the table? Should I announce that dinner is going to be early, ma'am? The maid asked. Give me 5 minutes alone with the girls and then go ahead, Anne agreed. Yes, ma'am. It didn't take long for the maid to find the two girls, as they were reading, unsurprisingly, books in the library. Your mother wishes to speak with you and Luna in the dining room, Ms. Hermione. Thank you, Sally. Hermione yawned. Come on, Luna. Right behind you, Hermione, Luna agreed. The two girls walked down the stairs to the dining room and took their seats at the table. You wanted to speak with us, Mum? Hermione asked. Yes, she agreed. I need you to save an hour or two tomorrow afternoon. Quote. Hermione glanced at Luna. Okay, Mum. The principles of love. It was with no small amount of trepidation that Hermione went to the meeting with her mother the next afternoon. She cast an envious look at her friend. Luna was bouncing along without a care in the world. It must be nice to be so innocent. Come in, girls, Anne said, waving them into her office. What's this about, Mum? Hermione asked. Luna had several questions for me about how relationships work that I was unable to answer the other day, Anne replied. I am able to answer them now. You've spoken with Father? Luna asked. I have, and he's told me that he doesn't mind me giving you this talk, Anne agreed. I think we should start with biology, Anne said thoughtfully. I presume you've already looked through my medical books. I have, Mum, Hermione squeaked. Good. Come over here, Luna. Anne waved the girl closer. I've got pictures. Okay, Luna agreed. You too, Hermione, Anne commanded. I've already read about this, Mum, Hermione said quickly, desperate to find a way out of the situation she'd found herself in. I don't need to go over it again, I don't have any questions. The books were quite comprehensive. Hermione stole a glance at her mother's face and did not like what she saw. They covered everything I might need to know, so I really think that my me would be better spent on something else. That wasn't a request, darling, Anne stated firmly. Yes, Mum, Hermione sighed. Good, you can sit on my other side, Anne said warmly. Harry was in the library studying his wand movements. He looked up from his book when Phil entered the room. Doing a bit of reading, Hermione's father asked. Practicing a few spells, Harry replied. Thought you kids weren't supposed to be doing that till after you graduated. We're not, Harry laughed. On the other hand, I just happen to have a wand that can't be tracked and instructions to test it. Useful. He scratched his chin. Could you get more for the girls? Best to wait till after we get back to Hogwarts, Harry said after a moment of thought. I made the one I've got and one of the teachers checked it out before I used it. Rather not take any chances. Good thought, Phil agreed. Get your coat, Harry, you're not going to want to be here for a few hours. All right. Luna was fascinated by what she'd learned from Hermione's mother. And so, in contrast to her friend, Luna was intensely disappointed when the lesson came to an end. Would it be all right if I came back with questions? Luna asked hopefully. Of course, dear, Anne agreed. You may feel free to ask me any questions that come to mind and I will do my very best to answer them or, failing that, help you find an answer. Luna seemed to mull it over for a moment. Would it be all right if I came back with some questions right now? Of course, Anne agreed. What do you need to know? I did a bit of supplemental reading after our talk yesterday to try to find my own answers since you were unable to tell me anything without first getting Father's permission and… Wait here, Luna asked. The girl stood up and darted out of the room. She returned a few minutes later with a vellum-covered book under one arm. What's your question, Luna? Anne prompted. Well, I just don't see how this would be possible, Luna said holding out the book to show the extremely graphic engraving involving 3 individuals adorning the page. I don't believe either Harry or Hermione are that flexible and I know for certain that I am not. Perhaps if we found the proper spell or potion to help. I suppose researching it could be interesting, but it just seems like a lot of work for very little reward. Luna flipped a few pages. This one might be possible. But I'm not sure where we'd find another girl that both Hermione and I would get along with. She scratched her chin. Perhaps Ginny. But I am not certain I would enjoy having Mrs. Weasley as a mother-in-law. The girl flipped a few more pages to another engraving. Is it common for 2 girls to do this? There's something similar with 4 girls on the next page, so I suppose it must be. I must confess that it's never occurred to me before. Do boys do something similar? There weren't any images in any of the books I was able to find, but I am not sure how comprehensive the material I've been using for my research has been. The expression on Luna's face conveyed nothing more than innocent curiosity. Luna, Hermione squeaked, doing her best to ignore the way her mother's face was turning red and how the woman's frame was being rocked with suppressed laughter. Yes, Hermione. Luna looked up. Did you have a suggestion on another page I should flip to? I admit that there are several more that I find confusing. Where did you find that book? It was hidden in a self-shrinking disillusion trunk under your bed along with several similar books, Luna replied innocently. Why do you ask? Did you forget you had them or where you left them? Should I fetch the trunk so we can go through all of them one by one? If you girls will excuse me for a moment, Anne said in a trembling voice. I have something to take care of. I shall try to be back in a few minutes. She barely managed to contain her laughter until she was out of the room. If nothing else, he thought as she fought to regain her composure, it was nice to have confirmation that her daughter had a healthy amount of curiosity. Time to go do the job her witch of a stepmother would never dreamed have doing. Close your eyes and think of your duty to produce an heir, Anne snorted. Hope that he finds a distraction or a secretary so you don't have to do your duty too often. She spent a brief moment wondering if her real mother would have been any better. A shame the woman hadn't lived long enough for her to have found out. Phil rolled up the partition separating the passenger compartment meant with the driver and turned to Harry with an unreadable look on his face. Already got it from Ron's older brothers, Harry replied. Great. Tell me if you have any questions, Phil laughed. Oh. And don't be surprised if Hermione or Luna have trouble looking you in the eye for the next few days. Where are we going? Fancy another visit to the club? Phil asked. Sure, Harry agreed. They are. Owed in silence for a few moments until Phil could no longer hold in his question. So, which of Ron's brothers? Harry sighed. All of them, at different times. What sort of thing did they have to say? Well, for starters, Charlie basically said no doing anything anyone involved in wasn't cool with. Bill said the same again and added in that anyone getting pregnant probably counted as something someone wasn't cool with and, some charms relating to that. Percy got way too far into the legalities of all of it, but, you know, that's what I expected since it's Percy we're talking about, and are some things about the wizarding world disturbing, and as for Fred and George, they were all about how to not get caught by Filch or some such, and that basically ran to use a secret passage EAD of a broom cupboard or the astronomy tower, and stuff that's supposed to be fun. Though I'm not sure how that thing with the Marmite and tweezers counts as fun. I think they were probably having me on. He hoped they were having him on anyway. Amelia's eyebrows went up when one of her Aurors barged into her office and began sweeping for bugs. Is there something you'd like to tell me, or Tonks? Amelia asked calmly. 2 things, boss, Tonks agreed. Well, I'm not going to say a word till I'm sure your office is secure and that you're you, boss, Tonks replied. Proceed, Amelia sighed. Tonks used another dozen charms on the office before raising the privacy wards and throwing a cup full of water into the director's face. You had better have a good reason for doing that, or Tonks, Amelia growled. Dispels any active magic on the target, Tonks explained. Imperio to Polyjuice. That bad, then. Gringotts slipped it to me along with a bit of info, Tonks agreed. Voldemort is planning to hit you this summer. Had planned to do it a few months ago, but we got lucky cause something else came up to delay it. That's not entirely unexpected, Amelia laughed. Is that all? Looks like Harry Potter and Dumbledore are also on the chopping block, and it also looks like there's moles in the department and at Hogwarts, Tonks finished. I've asked Mayday to keep an eye on your niece and her friend, and I'm not going to be more than 3 feet away from you till Voldemort kicks it. You're going to take that undercover assignment with the Granger family, Amelia corrected. I can take care of myself. The Granger's head of security wants a sit down with you and I'm not leaving you, boss, Tonks said firmly. You kick it and who gets the big chair? I know, and believe me, I'd really rather not work for that bastard. I have several reasons to want you with the Grangers, Amelia replied. That they'll shortly have enough wands to purge the department is only one of them. Another is because I think having a force outside Hogwarts is a good thing. A third is because it would give me somewhere to run, and a fourth is because I'd rather not lose you if the ministry goes bad. Boss, the fact that you could double for me isn't the only reason you got assigned to my protective detail, Amelia sighed. How's the recruiting going? Going good, boss, Tonks replied. Grangers already have almost as many Aurors as the ministry along with curse breakers and healers. Better quality overall too, since they don't have to saddle themselves with any useless nieces and nephews. I see. Which means there's no reason I should join them, Tonks said quickly. Being your double might not have been the only reason to keep me around, but it's still a good one. Amelia pursed her lips. You say Voldemort's planning to hit me this summer. The goblins did, boss, Tonks agreed. Then I have no need of you until then, Amelia replied. Boss, I'd much rather have you in a place where you can easily keep an eye on my niece, Amelia interrupted. You said they were also going to go after Potter and Dumbledore. That's the info I got, boss. They say when? Amelia asked intently. No, boss. Amelia sighed. See if you can get me a sit down with the Granger. I've got a few ideas I'd like to bounce off him. Boss, my ideas work and almost everyone is mostly happy, Amelia promised. Before you ask. Yes, even you, or Tonks. Understood, boss. So why did the goblins decide to share information with you? Don't know, boss, Tonks admitted. I was at the bank to deposit my pay when a couple of them started having a conversation outside my vault. I didn't know you spoke gobbledygook, Amelia commented. I don't, boss. The conversation was all in English. Tonks grinned. On my way out, they gave me that water, told me what it did, and asked me not to forget it the next time I was there. Curiouser and curiouser, Amelia murmured. See about that meeting. Or Tonks. The sooner the better, I think. So long as you promise not to leave the office without me, boss, Tonks said stubbornly. Gonna have to insist on that. Elia's eyes narrowed and she allowed the full focus of her gaze to fall on the oar, allowing the girl to feel just how annoyed she was by the demand. Right, boss, Tonks agreed. I'll get Susan on my side if I have to. On your way, or Tonks, Amelia sighed. My schedule shows that I have no reason to leave for the next few hours. On my way, boss. Philip led Harry into the club and back the stairs to the richly furnished office belonging to his friend. Phil, Harry, the man called out. Glad to see you could make it. Wife was having an important talk with the girls, Phil laughed. I'm willing to do anything to get away from that, even suffer your company for a bit. Good afternoon, sir, Harry greeted the man. Call me Charlie, he said easily. Charlie, Harry frowned in confusion. But the name on your door was the name of the first man to occupy my office, Charlie explained. His successor didn't change it and now we're stuck with the tradition. I see. And, please don't discuss anything you see or learn in the club outside the club, Charlie said with a twinkle in his eye. We need to keep our secrets, No problem, Charlie, Harry agreed. Thank you, Harry. I will say that you've got a good eye spotting it like you did. Most people don't. The man gave Harry an appraising look. Ever thought about what you'd like to do after you leave? School. Not much, Harry admitted. I was thinking I might see if I can become an magical policeman. Might not be a bad career for you, Charlie said thoughtfully. Then again, maybe we'll have OT. Her options for you to explore when the time comes. I'll be sure to explore them, Harry said with a grin. When the time comes. Charlie gave a booming laugh. You up for a game of gin, Harry? Up for anything, Charlie, Harry said. Wonderful, have a seat. Charlie waved at the chairs. You know how to play. Not really, Harry admitted. Think I know the rules. Wonderful, we'll be on an Then playing field then, and speaking of playing fields. Yes, how's your polo game coming along? Charlie asked. I think they're in for a surprise if they expect me to play like I did last time, Harry boasted with a wide grin. I was terrible before. I've improved to the point that I can safely say that I'm just very, very bad now. Been practicing then. Enough for it to start showing, Harry said proudly. 100% better than I was last time, which means a bit of time and hard work. Maybe I'll be able to say I'm a mediocre polo player in a few years. Good to hear, good to hear. Charlie turned toward Phil. You said you had another list of people for me. Thanks to Harry's connections, Phil agreed. You're quite fortunate that a number of people on it already work for you. Which is the only reason you didn't snap them up yourself, Charlie grunted. Bet you would have charged through the nose to hire them out to me too. I think you'd have found our rates very reasonable, Phil laughed. Not so reasonable as that. I'd have had more of the market cornered this time, Phil replied. Your financial suffering would have been the stuff of legends. It all depends on what's being ordered, Phil replied. Send me the list later and I'll see what I can do to fill it. Thanks. Charlie broke the seal on the deck and began shuffling the cards. Mind doing me a favor, Harry? Depends on the favor, Harry replied. And how much you're willing to pay, Phil interjected. Mercenary bastard. Charlie shot his friend a glare. Hoping you could use those connections of yours to get me a few things. What do you need? Harry asked. Couple sets of what you gave Hermione's uncle for Christmas, Charlie replied. I have some people who are quite interested in them. You know Hermione's uncle Jim. We work together, Charlie said sourly. He's the bastard responsible for a good percentage of my ulcers. Charlie is Jim's boss, Phil explained. You can understand how fun that must be. You have my sympathy, Harry laughed. So is it possible? Charlie asked intently. Very possible, Harry agreed. I'm friends with the inventors. Think you could get me an introduction then? I think I probably could, Harry replied. Great, Charlie began dealing. We'll discuss Harry's rates later, Phil said as he took his cards. Bleed the bastard as much as you can, Harry. Molly was in the kitchen when the sound of a dog barking drew her attention. She walked outside. The barking ceased and she could find no sign of any dog. The barking resumed the moment she walked back into the house. Peaceful place in the country. 2 sets of magical neighbors. She mimicked the real estate agent. Perfect place for a young couple to raise a magical family, my pale freckled ass. She muttered under her breath. Phil threw down his cards in disgust. That was the 3rd game in a row. It had been a long time since he suffered such a long string of defeats at the card table. That's another game you win. Harry, he sighed. What about me? Charlie demanded. Beating you was a team effort. And don't forget, this win means that's £20 you owe us. What about you? Phil replied. He looked up at the clock. I'm afraid I've got a meeting to go to for an hour or so. You mind staying at the club for a bit, Harry? I don't mind, Harry agreed. Good. Terribly sorry to do this to you. Phil stood up. Be back as soon as I can. Luna shifted closer to Hermione's mother, basking in the attention. Things were better than they had been in a long time, if only Father and Harry were with them. Then Luna Lovegood's life would be almost perfect. What was it like to go on dates with Mr. Granger? Luna asked curiously, eager to learn more about how relationships worked. Add the fact that he was wearing more jewelry than I was and that his clothing was much more fashionable than mine, and that's mostly accurate. Anne allowed. But you shouldn't be so quick to dismiss your father. Anne advised. Our first date was anything but dull. He broke your Uncle Jim's nose in a bar fight. Daddy got into a bar fight? Hermione asked in disbelief, eyes sparkling with interest. Wait. Daddy broke Uncle Jim's nose? She exclaimed in shocked disbelief. It was our first date. Anne giggled, setting the scene. I thought he was a frightfully stuffy bore and had no intention of dating him again. As you'd surmised, I'd only gone out with him to spite your step grandmother and because he promised to stop being such an insufferable git in class if I did. Quote, I thought you said you got together after the teacher made you. Hermione asked. That's what started it, Anne agreed. He found he liked me, I found I was willing to tolerate him, but I was going thr. Out a bit of a phase and saw him as a corrupt oppressor of the struggling underclass. Not that I'd ever so much as met a member of the struggling underclass, you understand, but I was rather young and I was very sure I knew exactly how the world worked. So what happened? Hermione demanded. Luna nodded, wide-eyed and obviously enthralled by the story. Well, to start with, your Uncle Jim was ill in active service with the Navy in those days, Anne began. How he'd found out about her date and why he'd decided to crash it were both questions he still refused to answer. She made a mental knot. To get a bit more revenge on the useless bastard to even the scales a bit. So your father came back from the loo to see to find his date being harassed by an uncouth uniformed lout and demand. Ed, your Uncle Jim apologize and leave us in peace, Anne replied. Your Uncle Jim, being your Uncle Jim, refused and again, being your Uncle Jim, was less than polite about it and dared your father to do something about it if he was man enough. Oh, and then he implied that your father was not man enough, insulted him, and told him to leave if he didn't want to get hurt. So your father punched him in the nose and broke it and proved him wrong. Daddy punched him in the nose? Hermione exclaimed in shock. They growled at each other a bit more first, but you have the basics of it, Anne agreed. I called your father a bloody idiot and said that he'd just punched my brother. Your father immediately apologized, complimented him on having such an attractive sister, and offered to let your Uncle Jim break his nose so they'd be even. Then what happened? Your Uncle Jim took him up on his offer, Anne said with a smile. Then the bloody idiots left me behind with the check to go on a pub crawl. She giggled. That made me so angry that I promised myself I'd never so much as give your father the time of day again. How'd he get you to forgive him? Hermione asked quickly. He didn't. Still hasn't so much as apologized. The git, Anne said, sounding a touch annoyed. Your Uncle Jim stumbled into my apartment at 5 the next morning, dumped me out of bed onto the floor, and Anu. NCED that he approved of my boyfriend and that I would be a fool to let him go and that he would be proud to have him as a brother-in-law. Uncle Jim said that. Then he vomited on my floor and passed out in my bed, Anne finished. Smiling at the memory. Your father showed up in class a few hours later immaculately dressed but covered in bruises and acting as if nothing had happened. I found out later that he and your Uncle Jim had picked another fight in another pub after leaving me, and, after befriending the men they'd been fighting, had all gone to a third pub and picked another fight there. Then, and dissolved into laughter. He plops down in the seat next to me and says he had fun on our date and asks what I have planned for our next one. The bastard. What did you say? I asked him if he had anything to say to me. And snorted. He told me that my family was a bit wild for a well-brought-up lad like himself, but that I seemed normal enough, so he was willing to overlook all that and keep dating me. Anne's lips pursed. I was less than pleased by that and was about to lay into him when he told me that I was cute when I was angry, but that I was absolutely ravishing when I was enraged beyond reason, and asked me if I was doing anything after classes, with a request that I let him do the planning this time, as his nose and ribs were feeling a bit tender, and then he requested that I find something less physically demanding than a bar fight when it was my turn to plan again, since he wasn't sure he could take another one so soon. Anne smiled fondly. The other students started arriving then, and he loudly announced that he still wanted to date me even after I had my brother break his nose. In front of everyone, Hermione squeaked. In front of everyone. I responded, if he hadn't wanted my brother to break his nose, then he shouldn't have offered, and told him to be quiet and that we would continue to conversation after class. He immediately agreed and told me he'd already booked a private room for us at a rather exclusive restaurant. That was how we planned our second date. And you've been together ever since? Hermione sighed. We have, Anne agreed. She turned back to Luna. With luck. Neither of your first dates will end like that. I had a devil of a time getting that vomit out of my carpet. You cleaned your own carpet? Hermione asked in shocked horror. As I mentioned before, I was going through my solidarity with the working class phase, Anne explained. Getting the vomit out of that carpet cured me of it nicely. I learned that while there's no shame in being part of the working class, the upper class is much more comfortable. One just has to be sure that one doesn't let oneself become an insufferable snob. Like your ex-step-grandmother, the useless witch. Charlie put down his cards when the intercom buzzed and hit the answer button. Yes. Someone to see your guest, sir. She has a wand. Show me a picture, he ordered. He turned his screen to allow Harry to get a look. Do you know her? That's Tonks, Harry agreed. She's an magical police woman, and she's also a friend of mine. Sort of a cousin too, I think. Show her in, Charlie ordered. Tonks walked into the room with a smile. Watch her, Harry. After a quick glance around the room, she carefully placed herself between Harry and the other man in the room. Who's your friend? Is there a problem? The man asked. I noticed that you were armed, Tonks replied. That's not exactly common in this country, is it? Please do not make any sudden movements. It's all right, Tonks. Harry put a comforting hand on her off shoulder. Charlie is a friend of Mr. Granger's. I'm also on first-name terms with your boss, Charlie added. Would it make you feel better if I told you that the lion and the unicorn were the best of friends? It would, Tonks agreed, relaxing. It would make me feel better if you did the nose trick, Harry interjected. Yo, you've been spending too much time around Mad Eye, Tonks said with a smile, morphing her nose into a snout. Satisfied? Partly, Harry agreed pompously. I'm now fairly sure you aren't an imposter, W. Hitch leaves a staggering array of compulsions you could be under. Brat. Tonks reached out and tried to muss his hair, something that was not easy to do considering its normal state. What can I do for you, or Tonks? Charlie asked. Was looking for Harry and Mr. Granger, Tonks replied. Got a bit nervous when I found Harry without Mr. Granger in the presence of an unknown armed adult. You can track them. I can track one of Harry's wands, Tonks agreed. I can't track the other one, and I didn't notice you hide it up your left sleeve, so stop frowning, Harry. I see. We've also restricted the trace to the director's office, Tonks added. That means me and Madam Bones. Would you be so kind as to do me a favor, or Tonks? Charlie asked. Just call me Tonks, and it depends on the favor. I would like you to check my office for magic and to put up something to ensure privacy if it wouldn't be too much trouble. I can do that, Tonks agreed. Won't be as good as what the Grangers have, but it'll be something. She waved her wand, frowned, and waved it again. I take that back. Something wrong. This place is almost as tight as the director's office, Tonks replied. Looks like it hasn't been maintained or upgraded for a while. Though. Thank you, Tonks, Charlie replied. Talk to Mr. Granger to get things modernized, Tonks advised. They should be able to arrange some top-shelf stuff. Even better than what Madame Bones is supposed to have around her office, but not necessarily as good as what had been put in unofficially. I shall, Charlie agreed. Which reminds me. Tonks turned to Harry and pasted on her best hopeful look. What is it? All I want is to assign you a bodyguard or two, Tonks replied. I promise that it's because I've got an ulterior motive and not because I don't think that you can take care of yourself. Well, not just because she thought he couldn't take care of himself. What is it? The boss thinks something bad might happen. I want to be prepared, Tonks said. Has she shared any details? Charlie asked eagerly. Nope, she hasn't really even flat out told me, but it's obvious if you spend as much time around her as I do. Charlie wrote out a quick letter and sealed it in an envelope. Be so good as to pass that along the next time you see Director Bones. Sure, Tonks agreed. Phil stepped out of his car and took a seat at the cafe. He was joined a few minutes later by a man in an expensive suit. You'll like this, the man began. I'm sure I will, Phil agreed. What do you have for me? An even dozen BMW R65 5th S, still in their crates. He announced proudly. Along with 2 dozen 75 5th S with the long wheelbase, also still in their crates. Very nice, Phil agreed. But I asked for 3 good beginner bikes. I got you those too, the man replied. 3 dozen Honda Cubs in crates. They came in a lot with the other bikes and didn't even scratch the budget you gave me to play with. I see. All legal, I trust. Since when have you cared about the law? Since when have I not? Phil replied. That Air Force you had me get you a few years ago along with all those tanks. Let me rephrase that. All legal in countries I care about. I trust. Nothing but, the man agreed. Speaking of that Air Force. Got another contact in Russia. Might be able to get a few more interesting things. The IR Space Agency is also filled with people looking to supplement their incomes, so are their security services. Lots of interesting possibilities. Wonderful timing, Phil said. I was getting ready to make another order. What do you need? Give me your list and I'll give you mine, Phil said after a moment of thought. Anyone selling special munitions? I don't touch that stuff, the man said quickly. You know I don't want anything to do with any of that stuff. I wouldn't use you if you did, Phil said bluntly, but I do wish to know if anyone is making offers so they can be dealt with. The guy relaxed a touch. Gonna pass it along to the same chaps you got the Air Force for. Phil just gave the man a bland look. Right, he agreed. Pleasure doing business with you. Likewise, Phil agreed. Molly stepped back to admire her handiwork. Sitting in a corner of her garden was a miniature white dog. Frog house with the word, Spike, written above the door in red letters. To Nay's side was a small pond and on the other were food and water dishes. Well, how do you like it? Molly asked. Woof, the frog replied. Good. She scratched him under the chin. She'd gotten so lonely. Why, with the children out of the house and her husband at work, it was nice to have a pet. Mandy's practice uniform was soaked in sweat as she and her teammates stumbled into the locker room after one of the worst sessions in recent memory. She ignored the distant thumps and shouting. They didn't matter. All that mattered to her was the shower she was about to take and the meal she was going to stuff herself with afterwards. Her mind abruptly returned to the present when the door to their locker room banged open and several skull-masked figures in black robes stormed in. Mandy's eyes were locked on the Death Eaters in the doorway. What a time to be caught without her wand. Her heart sunk when she realized that the other players' wands were also safely secured in their lockers. Purebloods on one side, trash on the other. One of the Death Eaters barked. What are you going to do to my players? The coach demanded, stepping between the terrorists and her girls. We're going to use them to send a message to the League. The Death Eater sneered. Trained animals have no place in a wizard's game. Quidditch is for people. Mandy felt like she was floating outside her body, like she was a spectator watching her own actions. She was the product of 100 generations of pureblood breeding, the perfect woman according to the Dark Lord's twisted ideology. Anything you do to my teammates, you do to me first. I'm a Muggle born. Mandy announced proudly. So am I, the Seeker, another pureblood, cheered. To heck with you lot. The other players rumbled their agreement, each pureblood. On the team declaring that they would not abandon their teammates, not even in the face of certain death. So be it, the Death Eater growled. Pick your targets. He pointed his wand at her. We kill them all. Let the bodies hit the floor. So be it, the Death Eater growled. Pick your targets. He pointed his wand at her. We kill them all. Mandy noticed a hint of movement behind the bastard bee. E4 something blurred towards his head, concluding with a hollow thunk on impact. It sounded reminiscent of a melon being broken open. A corner of her mind noted. What in the world just happened? She wondered as the bastard crumbled to the ground to reveal an annoyed-looking Ron holding a beater's bat in his right hand. The room seemed to freeze. Every eye was on the fallen terrorist. Every mind was occupied trying to comprehend what had just happened. Well, every mind save one. Ron turned to throw Mandy her new bat and finished the turn by giving the nearest man a knee to the grapes followed by a chop to the throat. The starting Seeker plucked the now distracted Death Eater's wand out of his loosened grip and began flinging cutting curses interspaced with disarming charms at the distracted terrorists who seemed almost frozen with indecision as the enraged women fell upon them. The chasers and backup Seekers snatched the flying wands out of the air and began flinging hex of their own into the mass of masked thugs. Ron groin stomped the first Death Eater he'd hit and followed that up with another hard stomp to the man's wrist. One of the terrorists broke in Reed to run only to take one of the Seeker's curting curse to the back of the neck, spraying the locker room entryway with a mist of arterial blood before the man fell to the ground. The fight, massacre really, lasted less than 2 minutes from start to finish. 3 of the Harpies and 2 of the team's support staff had suffered minor injuries. 2 of the Death Eaters survived, though neither would last much longer without immediate medical assistance. You okay, Ron? Mandy asked, bosom heaving from the excitement. Ron. Her breath caught when she noticed that his left fist was covered in blood. Yeah, why? The look of annoyance on the boy's face hadn't changed from the start to the end of the fight. A small part of Mandy's mind wondered just what he'd been through that he could be so blasé about dealing with a Death Eater attack. Her heart was racing faster than it had during her debut game. The boy, no man, in front of her had just made himself much more interesting and desirable than every one of her previous suitors combined. He would be hers, she decided. She was not going to lose a man willing to snatch her from certain death. She would make him hers as he'd just made her his. Your hand. Mandy took a step closer. It's not mine. He loosened his grip to reveal a carving knife resting on his palm. Hope I didn't ruin the edge on his ribs. Oh. Ron wiped the blade on one of the fallen Death Eater's robes and returned the knife to its place in his pocket after a quick inspection to assure himself that it hadn't suffered any serious damage. Came here to give you your new bat. Merry Christmas. Christmas was last week, she said automatically. Your bat wasn't finished till today, Ron retorted. Suppose I could keep it till your birthday if you'd rather. No, I mean, thank you, Ron. She held the bloodstained bat to her chest. It was precious, all the more precious because it was a gift from her knight and he'd used it to save her life. No matter what else the future might hold, she knew that it was an item she'd treasure for the remainder of her life. You're welcome. I would like to commission another one, though. She glanced down at the bat. Bats break, bats are disposable. This one saved my life. I want to keep it forever. Ron nodded. All right. He looked down at the shattered Death Eaters. This sort of thing happened to you often? He made sure the surviving Death Eaters were stunned, bound, and then hit them with Harry's hex that grew hands together and then cast a few more of Harry's new ones just to be sure that they wouldn't cause any more trouble. First time. She giggled with nervous energy. This sort of thing happens to me quite a bit, Ron admitted. Always figured it was Harry that attracted it, now I'm wondering if it's me. He scratched his chin. Or that it might be contagious. Don't suppose street mungos could test for it. Good swing, lad, the coach came over, interrupting their conversation. KS like you took out at least half the bastards' teeth. She spat on the second Death Eater he'd hit, one of the 2 Survivors. Groin stomp could use a bit of work though, hit him off center. Wasn't aiming for the groin, Ron explained. Was going to go for the neck, figured a crushed windpipe would be more distracting than a bit of pain. Bastard moved so I did my best with what I had, which was the groin. I just did what anyone would have done, Ron disagreed. In the background, the other beaters gathered up the Death Eater masks to add to the team trophy case while the Seekers gathered the teeth and the Chasers the wands for the same reason. Tonks was fidgeting rather badly by the time Phil returned. She did not like the idea of leaving her boss alone for such a large amount of time. Who knew what trouble Madam Bones could get herself into without proper adult supervision? Madam Bones would like a sit down with you as soon as possible. Tonks blurted as soon as the man entered the room. What, now? Phil asked, visibly taken aback by both the woman's presence and her sudden and unexpected request. If possible, Tonks agreed. If not, tell me when, quickly, please. Is something wrong? Phil asked nervously. I made the boss promise not to leave her office without me, Tonks explained nervously. I've been gone a lot longer than I expected I would be. Your war, i.e. that you've been gone long enough that she might allow herself to forget? Charlie asked. Something like that, Tonks agreed evasively. Bodyguard. Chief of Close Security and Body Double, Tonks explained. She turned back to Phil. Your decision, sir. Up for it, Harry? Phil asked. I think we'd better, Harry agreed. We'll take my car, Phil decided. You are welcome to accompany us or go ahead as the mood takes you. I'll go ahead, Tonks said. Thank you, sir. The woman rushed out to find some place she could apparate from. Very impressive to have someone so loyal, Charlie said approvingly. It is, Phil agreed. He handed an envelope to his friend. That's what I can arrange for quickly. Figure 10% for my troubles, I'm still waiting on the rest. Thank you. ALWAYS happy to make £1 or £2 in service to the crown, Phil laughed. After you, Harry. Bye, Charlie. Molly glanced at the clock again. Her youngest son was late and every minute was making her more and more annoyed that the boy hadn't been considerate enough to call ahead first to let them know he'd been delayed. Mum, can we have dinner now? Ginny whined. Not until your brother gets back, Molly replied. But what if he stays out all night? I'll give him another hour and then we'll eat if he's not here, Molly said. Another glance at the clock caused her to sigh. He's on his way back now. It shouldn't be long. I'll set the table, Ginny agreed. Thank you, dear. The front door opened and Molly's fury disappeared in a flash the second she got a look at the boy. His face was covered in lip marks. Marks from several different women judging from the different shades and sizes. She wasn't sure how to feel about this. The woman blinked. She'd have to have Arthur, she'd have to find someone outside the family to give the boy a lesson on contraceptive charms to hopefully keep him from making her a grandmother until after he'd finished Hogwarts and established himself as a broom maker. What happened to you, Ronald? She asked her youngest son, trying to decide how to feel about her deduction. Mandy really liked her new bat, Ron replied, still dazed. Her teammates liked it too. I've got a pocket full of orders. That's Mboy, Arthur announced proudly, but quietly. Years of married life had taught him which boasts were best said loudly and which were best kept from the wife. This one, he decided, definitely fell within the latter category. I see. Molly wiped away a tear as her mind set on the emotion to feel. Her little Ronnie was growing up. Ginny's jaw had dropped, mind unable to process the thought of the slobbiest of her brothers being a ladies' man. Bill sure, Charlie yes, but Ron. The girl's mind reset. She'd have put Percy higher than Ron on the D.'s irritability scale and he was a rule-following dork. But Ron, of all her brothers, Ron was getting attention from what appeared to be a team of professional Quidditch players. There really was no accounting for taste. The twins were in a similar bind. A quick nod to each other and they'd made their decision. They weren't going to tease their youngest brother, they weren't going to play pranks on him. They weren't going to do anything that would annoy him in the slightest. What they were going to do was ask for pointers when he'd regained his senses. Whatever worked for Ron had a more than average chance of working for anyone. Their smiles sharpened as a few thoughts began to form. There was money to be made. Allow the two to enter. Go right in, one of the Aurors said with a friendly grin. Phil, Harry, Good of you to join us. Amelia said with a smile. Good of you to invite us, Amelia, Phil replied. That benefit I twisted your arm into agreeing to attend looks like it's going to be postponed indefinitely, Harry. So you're off the hook. Anything I can do for you instead? Harry asked. A deal is a deal. You held up your part of it, only fair that I hold up mine. Maybe an ad in the wireless. Amelia said thoughtfully. We can work out the details later, after the current emergency blows over. Sure. Thank you, Harry. She motioned for them to take their seats. You may speak and turn around for the duration of the meeting, or Tonks. Yes, boss. Thank you, boss, Tonks said from her place in the corner. The woman turned around and shot Harry a wink. Or Tonks. As on time out for locking me in my office, Amelia explained through clenched teeth. Or Tonks apparently believes that locking me in my office falls within her scope of duties as my chief bodyguard. You promised not to leave, boss. Tonks pointed out. I don't see that it mattered if you were locked in or not. I had assumed that the loo was one of the places I was permitted to visit in your absence, or Tonks. Amelia stated flatly, shooting her aura a glare filled with malice and resentment. Be happy you got back before I wed myself, or I'd have done more than make you stand in the corner and think about what you did. Yes, boss. Something told Tonks that it was an inopportune time to point out that there was a perfectly good and presumably watertight waste pail in the office. Combine it with a vanishing charm and everything would be set. She gave a mental sniff, seemed the director's chair had made her boss a bit soft. Wipe that look off your face, or Tonks, Amelia snapped. I am not getting soft. No, boss. Of course not, boss. How in the heck did she do that? I spent 3 terms at the academy. Young lady, I can guess every thought that rattles around that mostly empty skull of yours. Amelia growled. She turned away from her aura and back to Phil. Thank you for coming on such short notice. I was hoping that I could persuade you to move your family into my estate, Amelia replied. That was before I got a report on your living arrangements. How in the world do you manage to take care of something so large? A veritable army of servants, he laughed. Wanted to simplify the protection scheme and to pool resources. On the nose. I've also received a bit of intelligence, via Aura Tonks, contacts at Gringotts, that Voldemort is planning to make an attempt on Mr. Potter's life this year and my own sometime this summer. My offer to you is one of the things I'm using to persuade Aura Tonks to leave my side during the year. You'd assign her to my daughter. Phil blurted in delight before wincing. Sorry, Harry, forgot you were the target. It's a safe bet that Hermione is too, and I'd much rather have any guards looking after her and Luna than me, Harry said softly. There's also the fact that Hermione is never too far from your side and any guards watching her would be in a good place to help you, Tonks giggled. There is that, Harry agreed. But I'm more concerned with my friends being safe than I am with my own safety. If this keeps Hermione and Luna safe, I'm all for it. I can look after myself if it comes to it. It also keeps my niece and her friends safe if there is a large force at Hogwarts, Amelia admitted. That was one of my primary concerns. I'd love to assign Aurors to watch over the castle, but I don't have the budget to do it. Sounds like we have the beginnings of a deal, Phil said cheerfully. I'll put a dozen or so guards around Hogwarts under the command of Ms. Tonks under the understanding T. Hat they're there to protect a few named individuals, not the castle as a whole. Agreed, Amelia said immediately. Bugger the castle. Anything you'd like to add, Harry? Phil asked. Just a tea of people I don't want anywhere near any of the girls for any reason, Harry said looking deadly serious. Why? Amelia barked. Because I got a good look at several Death Eaters and I suspect several more. Names? Amelia asked eagerly. Harry dug around his pocket for a few moments before emerging with a grubby list which he handed to Madame Bones. You carry a list of possible Death Eaters around with you? Tonks asked incredulously. Not even Mad Eye walked around with an enemy list. Well, she didn't think he did anyway. Never could tell with that crazy bastard. I somehow linked my pockets to my trunk, Harry replied. Well, I think it's my trunk. It doesn't matter which clothes I'm wearing in. Only seems to work when I'm wearing them. The boy didn't like the gleam that appeared in the director's eye. Reminded him way too much of the ones that adorned the professor's every time he made a mistake. Would you be willing to teach me that incredibly useful sounding charm? Amelia purred, looking more and more dangerous by the second. I would if I knew what I did, Harry said cautiously. I did it by accident. Or Tonks. Yes, boss. Who do we have that can research this issue with Mr. Potter? Amelia asked, confirming Harry's suspicions that he was in for a bad time. Or Stickle in spell research, or Watts in spell research, and or Pinch on the retirement rolls. Who used to be in spell research and whose wife's offered me 20 galleons and one of those pies she makes if I could find him something to do that would get him out of the house and out from underfoot. I don't even know any of them, Harry sighed, resigned to the fact that the remaining days of his vacation would not be as carefree as he'd hoped. Good. What we're going to do is grant you a special dispensation to do magic outside of school, and we'll see if one of our researchers can't figure out what you did. How about you give special dispensation to my friends to do magic outside of school? You agree to let Professor Flitwick take the lead in researching it, and you agree to only teach it with my permission, Harry offered. Lovegood, Granger, and Weasley. Put Bones, Longbottom, and Abbott on my list of friends. Please, Harry said after a moment of thought. Buttering me up, or do you really have a close relationship with my niece? A little of the first and a whole lot of the second if your plans with Mr. Granger work out, Harry replied. I think we have a deal, Mr. Potter. Or rather, you will after we discuss what you're going to pay him. Phil interjected smoothly. I assure you that his rates are quite reasonable, and by quite reasonable I mean obscenely high. Shall we start at a measurable percentage of your yearly budget and go up from there? All right, Amelia laughed. How would you like a chance to poke through the property room, Harry? You can have what you can carry so long as it isn't needed as evidence for a current case. I'll even include paperwork to keep restricted items. Harry gave the man a small nod. He can have what we can carry. The we includes or Tonks, who will come along to make sure that we do not accidentally take something that will harm us, Phil countered. Fred and George took a moment to digest the tale their youngest brother had told before they moved on to the question and answer section. This changed everything. The twins shared a glance until George broke the silence. Are you pondering what I'm pondering, twin o' mine? We asked Harry for pointers on Death Eater stomping and stakeout everywhere witches congregate that might also be subject to Death Eater attack. Fred rubbed his hands together. Then we heroically ambush the bastards using every unfair advantage we can think up the second they crawl out of their stinking holes. Exactly, George agreed. Thank you, Ron. You've been most helpful on continuing the Weasley line. We couldn't be prouder to have you as a brother, Fred agreed firmly. Can't wait to tell Bill that his advice is rubbish too, George added. Be yourself, huh? Should have known that was a bunch of bull. Stupid ideas like that are probably why it took him so long to find a girl. Would probably work if we were Harry, Fred mused. Explains why he's made a hobby out of beating Voldemort. Selfish bastard could have told us, George grumbled. Why didn't he? We'd have told him if we'd thought of it. Don't think he realizes what he's doing, Ron said quickly, trying to protect his friend. He's kinda clueless. I think you were right, he's being himself when he's beating Voldemort. We were the ones that realized that anyone could do it. A point, little brother, a point, George conceded. Wait till we tell the rest of the guys what we learned, Fred giggled. And by tell I mean sell the information about what we've learned to the rest of the guys for as much gold as we can wring out of the horny bastards. Dark Lord will be toast in a week, George agreed. And we're going to be richer than a dozen Malfoys. Ron cleared his throat. One thing I think we need to make clear to everyone is that it's not a good idea to be without your wand ever. In was in my trunk when I needed it because of the stupid reasonable restriction. Harpies had theirs in their lockers. We got lucky this time, we can't count on being this lucky ever again. Right you are, brother of ours, Fred agreed. If we'd have been lucky in the first place, we'd have never have had to deal with any of this in the first place. Tonks had to suppress a giggle as yet another box of items disappeared into Harry's seemingly bottomless pockets. What is it? Harry asked. I think the boss forgot about your pockets, Tonks replied. I don't think this is linked to my trunk like I thought it was, Harry sighed. Even with expansion charms, there's no way it should be able to hold all this. Might have burst open and spilled over the room, Phil suggested. Maybe, but I don't believe for a second that I'm that lucky, Harry replied. Anything else you think I should grab, Tonks? Don't see anything, the Auror replied after a quick scan of the room. You've pretty much cleared out everything uncursed. Anything you want, Harry prompted. Nothing that isn't cursed. What about what we've already grabbed? Harry asked. Couple things, she agreed. Let me poke through it later, yeah. Done, Harry agreed. He quickly smothered a grin as a thought hit him. Step over here for a second, please. What are you gonna do? Tonks demanded, more than a bit suspicious of the expression on the boy's face. Something that will amuse me and hopefully Madam Bones as well, Harry replied as he swept the woman into his arms. Open the door please, Phil. The man complied and Harry stepped out of the room and walked down the hall to the director's office with the struggling Auror in his arms. Stop that, Harry laughed. I don't want to drop you. Let me go, Tonks grumbled. In a minute, Harry replied. People are watching, Tonks complained. Phil rushed ahead to open the door to the director's office to allow Harry and his struggling cargo an easy entry. Finished? Amelia asked, looking up from her paperwork and paused to digest the scene. Why are you carrying my Auror? My Auror, Harry corrected. Deal was I could have anything in the room that I could carry out of the property room. True, Amelia sighed. Teach me to look at the fine print. Well, a deal is a deal. Enjoy your new life, Auror Tonks. I suppose I'll just have to find a new bodyguard. Perhaps one that won't lock me in my office. Boss, Tonks whined. She squirmed out of Harry's arms. Care to come to dinner tonight, Amelia? I think it best to have you along to help Harry settle his new Auror. Phil asked with a grin. Your niece is of course welcome to join us. I would love to, Amelia agreed. If it is all right with Auror Tonks. She shot the woman a mocking grin. I have to ask Harry if I'm permitted to look after your security, Tonks sniffed. I insist on it, Harry said. Along with the other girls and yourself. I don't want any of you to get hurt. Anne was in the library when one of the maids walked up and cleared her throat to draw attention to herself. What is? Anne asked, looking up from her book. One of Ms. Hermione's friends is here for dinner along with her security detail. She says that Mr. Granger invited her to come along with a few others. Did she tell you how many people she expects to come? Yes, Mrs. Granger. Tell the cooks the number and tell my daughter that she has a guest. Where did you put the friend and what is the name? Susan Bones, Mrs. Granger, in the blue room. Susan. Both women heard the faint echo of Hermione's voice. It appears that you will not need to inform my daughter, Anne said dryly. Thank you, that will be all. Anne rose to her feet and walked out of the room. Susan was a bit overwhelmed by the level of enthusiasm in Hermione's greeting. She hadn't realized that she was so close to the other girl, or perhaps it was more a case that Hermione got lonely stuck in her giant house during the holidays. Hi, Hermione, Susan replied. Hi, Luna. Hello, Susan, Luna said. What are you doing here? Hermione asked, taking the other girl by the hand and dragging her towards a set of chairs. Your father invited me and my Aunt Amelia to dinner, Susan replied. I'm so glad you came. I was hoping to get a chance to talk to another girl before we got back on the express, Hermione continued. Susan glanced towards Luna. Another girl. I'm afraid that my father's repertoire of cosmetic charms is rather limited and so are mine as a consequence, Luna explained. Cosmetic charms, Susan said dumbly. Who do you want to learn them for? She leaned forward to get the good gossip. Harry of course, Luna replied. Hermione got the idea that we could modify cosmetic charms to help us restore Harry's collection of motorcycles. Oh, Susan sighed. Of course that's what you want to learn them for. Unless they were just using that as an excuse to avoid being teased, she thought suddenly. I'd be happy to share all the ones I know, but Lavender and the Pottle twins are the ones you need to talk to about this. We'll do that too, Hermione assured the girl. We just wanted a couple now so we could tear them apart and get a general idea how they worked. I see. Or maybe they actually were being genuine about wanting them for motorcycle maintenance. Bloody confusing it was. So glad you could join us, Susan. Right, Anne said as she swept into the room. Yes, Mrs. Granger, Susan agreed. Thank you for the invitation. Anne was waiting at the door when Phil's car Ved with the remainder the guests for their impromptu dinner party. You must be Amelia, Anne said with a wide smile. I'm Anne, Hermione's mother. A pleasure to meet you, Madame Bones replied. Please allow me to introduce Aurora Tonks. She'll be commanding the protection detail at Hogwarts. A pleasure. Anne gave the Aurora a once-over. The pleasure is mine, Mrs. Granger, Tonks replied. This way, Anne said, waving for her guests to follow her. I'll show you where you can wash before dinner. God help me if she starts doing it at Hogwarts, Harry mumbled, giving voice to his thoughts. God help us all. What was that, Harry? Phil asked. Nothing, Harry replied. We were hoping to get your opinion on something, Mr. Potter, Amelia said smoothly. Yes, Harry asked. What can I do for you? We were speculating on the cause of Hermione's petrification in your second year, Amelia explained. Since we were never given an official explanation, I told them that it could be a number of things and we were going down the list. Bloody big basilisk, Harry replied. We've already ruled that one out since there were no deaths, Anne said. Do you have any other ideas? No, it was a basilisk, Harry said firmly. Didn't kill her because she got hit indirectly. She'd just figured out what it was and was using a mirror. Harry was immediately the recipient of a number of horrified gazes. It's okay, he assured the adults. I killed it. You killed a basilisk, Amelia persisted. Had a load of help from Fox the Phoenix, but yes, Harry agreed. He pulled up his sleeve. It almost got me, but I got it. His tone dripped with smug satisfaction. Got it in the brain with a sword through the roof of the mouth. The boy's smile deepened. Even if Fox hadn't saved me, I'd have still taken the bastard with me. The boy didn't notice how intently the staff were listening to his every word, nor the looks of approval those words prompted. Gave you another scar for the collection, Harry? Phil asked with a grin, hoping it hid how horrified he was. Bet the girls love them. I bloody hate them. Hermione jumped into the conversation. Just means that Harry got himself hurt again. You really should be more careful, Harry, Susan admonished. It's not his fault that trouble finds him, Luna said quickly, trying to defend her friend, hoping to head off the conflict she feared was coming. Granger, would you mind doing a favor for me? What is it, Madame Bones? Hermione asked. I'm going to drop off a pad of after-action reports. I'd appreciate it if you'd badger Harry into filling them out for me. They'd make a nice addition to the boys' application packet to the Auror Corps. Mr. Potter, I'd be more than willing to make it worth your while to not put up too much of a fuss and fill them out. What have you been telling her about us, Susan? Hermione demanded. She kept up a stern glare for a few seconds before bursting into another fit of giggles. I'll help Harry fill them out. Madame Bones, we can discuss our fee later. That's my girl. Never do anything for free, Phil said proudly. Adventures aside, are you kids looking forward to going back to class? Of course, Hermione agreed. Luna and I don't have the facilities here that we can get at Hogwarts. It's not that you don't have a lovely shop, Daddy, It's more focused on internal combustion while Hermione and I are currently focused on external combustion, Luna said quickly, hoping to cover her friend's faux pas. One never criticized another's capabilities. How about you, Susan? Phil prompted. It'll be nice to see my friends every day again, Amelia's niece replied. I feel sorry for Harry, though. Oh, the adults turned their attention back on the boy. Professors don't let me have a minute to myself, the boy grumbled. It's your own fault for creating such fascinating spells, Hermione laughed. Harry makes mistakes that everyone else would kill to duplicate. To Harry's surprise, Ms. Jane was waiting for him when he got back to his suite that night along with several other members of the staff. Can I help you, Ms. Jane? Harry asked calmly. Close the door, Mr. Potter. The woman ordered. She waited until Harry complied to speak. You previously stated that you would kill anyone that attempted to harm our Hermione. I did, Harry agreed. Quote, would you like to learn how to be better at it? The Drones Club. The Drones Club. Hedwig swooped into the room to land on Fred's head and, after taking a moment to make herself comfortable, proudly presented her leg to George. It's a letter from Harry, George announced. What did he say? Fred asked, being careful not to dislodge the bird from her perch. He well remembered what had happened the one and only time he had On the plus side, the school healer had been able to reattach his scalp in such a way that it wasn't visibly evident that it had ever been torn off, and they'd been able to find a LL of George's fingers, so she'd been able to reattach them without any scarring as well. Neither twin would have been happy to be marked in a way that made it easy for the lay public to easily distinguish them from each other. Says he has a potential customer for us, friend of Hermione's father, George replied. Set up a meeting for us and everything. Smashing. Good sport, and all that rot, Fred laughed. He'd known something would pop up to save them. And you said we were in trouble. We are, George said firmly. Demand isn't quite what we'd hoped it would be. It's increasing. But not fast enough, George sighed. They should have started out with at least double the amount of funds they had. Who knew starting a business would be so bloody hard? We should have. Percy certainly told us enough times, Fred admitted. Bah, whoever listens to a word that Windbag says? Harry awoke to the sensation of someone sitting on his chest and opened his eyes to find Hermione staring down at him with an odd expression on her face, along with Luna, who was staring intently at the left side of his face. When were you going to tell us that you enslaved Tonks? Hermione demanded, bouncing a bit for emphasis. We dislike having to find these things out from other people, Harry. Did she tell you that? Harry mumbled, trying to drag himself awake. No, Daddy did, Hermione replied. Several hours before. They'd figured Harry would be easier to take advantage of when he was severely sleep-deprived. It's all a joke, Harry explained. Happy. We know that, Luna spoke up. I belly. Eve, you will find that any annoyance on our part stems from the fact that you did not offer to carry either or both of us around, which was quite thoughtless of you, since it sounded like it would be quite fun. Hermione's blush confirmed Luna's statement. I believe that I speak for Hermione when I say that I'm going to have to insist on adding a large penalty, since you did not do this for us early. And due to the fact that you did not immediately tell us about this new source of recreation, Luna replied. If anyone should be writing you, it should be us. Am I correct in my speculation? Hermione. Yes, Luna, the blushing girl agreed. Her eyes widened, a deep blush colored her features, and she was both vexed and relieved that the innuendo seemed to go straight over Harry and, surprisingly, after the talk they'd endured with the lady of the Granger house, Luna's head as well. Or perhaps not, the amended after seeing a hint of a smirk forming on her best female friend's mouth. She wasn't sure either way. It was always hard to tell what was going on in Luna's mind. Fine, Harry said, pulling the pillow over his face to block out the light. Now will you let me get back to sleep? The doorman looked down at the two gingers with a frown. It wasn't just his job to keep the riff-raff out of the club. His job was also to act as the first line of security, and it was his job on the line if he made a mistake. He made a quick evaluation of the two and quickly decided that there was no way in heck either of the pair was getting though. Is there something you gentlemen need? He demanded. Ed in a decidedly unfriendly tone that usually worked to clear off all but the most determined solicitor. We're supposed to meet with someone named, he glanced down a piece of paper in his hand. Charles Peel at the Diogenes Club. The left ginger replied uncertainty. Are you sure it wasn't the Drones Club, sirs? The doorman asked, eyeing them doubtfully. The two specimens in front of him seemed like exactly the sort that would seek membership in the other club, and the membership of the other club was exactly the sort which would confuse the names and locations. We're sure it was the Diogenes Club, the left ginger stated. Might be a couple hours early, the right ginger added. We wanted to be sure we wouldn't be late if we had trouble finding the place. What are your names? The doorman demanded, thinking it unlikely that either of the pair actually had an appointment, and a bit vexed they knew the name of the club's most prominent and secretive member. Weasley, the left ginger said. I'm Fred, and I'm George. And you're sure this is the club that you're supposed to go to? The doorman persisted, stalling for time as the plainclothes security guards began to converge. This is the club, isn't it, George? Fred demanded. It's the one Harry told us to go to, George agreed. That wouldn't be Harry Potter, would it? The doorman asked intently. It would be, Fred agreed. Does that make a difference? A very big one, the doorman agreed, suddenly very accommodating, and signaling for the rest of the security force to break off. In the future, be sure. To state from the beginning that you're here on behalf of Mr. Potter to avoid any possibility of there being a misunderstanding. Wait one moment, I'll have someone escort you to your meeting. He tapped a hidden button and the trio was soon joined by a large serious-looking man in a dark suit. What is it? The large humorless man growled, seeing the two and figuring he was being called in to scare off some undesirables. Having seen the alert signal and the all-clear that meant the potential security threat had been downgraded. They say they have a meeting here in a couple hours, the doorman replied. What's in the case? The large man demanded, glaring down at the twins. Product samples, Fred said helpfully. They say that Mr. Potter sent them, the doorman said helpfully. Then they won't mind if I call Mr. Potter to confirm this, the humorless man stated firmly. Will they? Not at all, George said quickly, more than intimidated by the reception they'd gotten so far. In fact, we insist on it, Fred agreed. Similar thoughts dancing through his head. Just who in the heck was Harry involved with and just what in the heck had he gotten them into? Wait here, the large man ordered. Harry was just sitting down to breakfast when the butler arrived with an antique-looking telephone on a silver tray. Phone for you, sir. Thanks, Harry said, trying to pin down who had the technical ability and the desire that wasn't already in the house. Harry, here. He listened for a few moments. Yes, but the meeting I arranged isn't for a couple hours. He paused to think. Put them in a waiting room and tell Charlie that I would suggest sending for one of my sort to make sure that they twins are not imposters. He listened to the phone for a bit. Actually, a quick way you can do it is to ask them where they got the money to start their shop. My Triwizard Winnings is the answer. Harry listened to the reply. No problem, happy to help, bye. Fred and George jumped when the large humorless man placed a ham-sized hand on each of their shoulders. Mr. Potter says that you two are early, the man announced. Why don't you two tell me how you got the money to start your business? Harry gave it to us, Fred said quickly. It's the money he got from being forced to compete in a tournament, George added. 1,000, total. Name of the tournament. The man persisted. The twins shared a glance. Triwizard. Seems clear enough, Fred replied. Simple enough, George agreed. Privately, both boys were still wondering what in the heck Harry had gotten into, though much more optimistic than they had been just a few short minutes before after seeing how rich the waiting room was. The twins hadn't been waiting for long when the door swung open to add a white-haired man with a slightly unkempt handlebar mustache and a face marked by years of stress. Harry sent you, the man asked. He did, George agreed. Great. I'm Charlie, your potential customer. Pleased to meet you, Charlie. Fred said, holding out his hand to be shaken. I'm Fred and this is my twin, George. To start with, how do you two know Harry? Charlie asked with a grin. From school, Fred replied. He's also our business partner, George added. Business partner. Charlie burst into laughter. He charges me £10,000 and a 10% finder's fee forever. Why thing we get from you and he's your business partner? Boys spending way too much time around Phil. If it helps, Fred began. We may have neglected to mention the fact that he owns a third of the company to him, George finished. Even better, Charlie laughed. The fact that you two are Harry's partners changes things considerably. Is that good or bad? Fred asked cautiously. Very good. Now, I understand that you two are inventors. We are, George agreed. I've had a chance to go over several of your inventions and I like them. What's more, I like the idea of modifying them to better suit my purposes. What I'd like to do is license your designs for my company's use and maybe to have you do a bit of manufacturing for us. He scratched his chin. Possibly a bit of product development as well. Depending on how well you get on with my tech people. The twins shared a look. I think we might be able to do business, they offered. Great. When can we start? After we have a chance to speak with Harry. Fred said quickly but firmly, hoping to stall for time to figure things out. We'd be happy to leave our samples here or give a product demonstration if you like, George said quickly. We came prepared to give a demonstration, we did not come prepared to work out a deal right here and right now. Harry's the brains when it comes to that stuff, Fred sighed, realizing that it was true and that he and his brother were in way over their head. We're just the inventors, George agreed cheerfully, deliriously happy at the prospect of dumping the hard boring stuff into someone else's lap. He's the brains behind your business and you didn't tell him that either. Charlie chuckled. How about you two come back here with him later? Deal, Fred said quickly. Would you like us to demonstrate our samples first? George said quickly. Why don't we save that till Harry gets here? Charlie suggested. It will also give me a chance to wrestle my tech people away from whatever they're doing. We'll have Harry set something up, Fred agreed. Thank you, Charlie. Anything for Harry's business partners, Charlie said. He opened the door and stuck his head out. Get them a car to wherever they want to go. I suspect that where they'll want to go is the Granger family's country house. Sir. The twins heard the guards agreed. You two have breakfast yet? Charlie asked. Not yet. See if you can get them something to eat too, Charlie ordered. Now if you two will excuse me, I really must get back to work. We'll be back, as soon as we can, Fred promised. Whenever works for Harry works for me, Charlie replied, appearing to be supremely unconcerned by the whole thing. Thank you for stopping by, I look forward to your next visit. Hopefully it would at least be half as amusing as this one had been. The twins exchanged a glance. Looked like things weren't looking quite so bad after all. They'd thought partnering with Harry would lead them to good things. Nice to have themselves proven correct so quickly. Phil watched in shock as a much put upon Harry walked past his office with Luna in his arms being trailed by his daughter. Faster, Luna demanded. It's my turn on Harry in another 4 minutes, Hermione reminded the two, sounding imperious. Don't tire him out too much. Let's find another staircase. Luna giggled. He carefully closed the door and turned to his wife, hoping by all that was holy that she could shed some light on the situation. What? He asked dumbly. They're still doing that, Phil chuckled. From the sounds of things, it's Harry's that's in the most danger. True. But that's not what kept him from bursting in. He couldn't believe that our little Hermione could be so vulgar and was sure that there had to be an innocent explanation for what was being discussed. Anne agreed. Harry staggered into the main entranceway with Hermione on his shoulders, demanding that he go faster and threatening to flog him if he didn't. Well, he thought to himself, at least they were enjoying themselves. Though he did wish that they weren't quite so enthusiastic about getting into the spirit of things. Fetch me my riding crop, Hermione ordered imperiously. Please, Mr. Johnson, she added, addressing the man who'd treated her first skinned knee, with a smile. I think the three of you are a bit young to take things that far. The valet said with a poorly concealed grin. U.R.K. Hermione blushed a deep red as she remembered some of the more unusual questions Luna had asked her mother and the answers they'd received. That wasn't. I didn't, that is to say, the girl sputtered. My turn again, Luna cheered. Visitors for Mr. Harry, the butler announced, drawing attention to the two gaping Weasley twins. Who'd seen and heard just enough to get the wrong, or perhaps right, conclusion. Core, he makes it look so easy, Fred said, eyes shining with envy. We know the secret now, George assured his twin. That'll be us soon. Soon, Fred agreed, eyes shining. What do you two need? Harry asked. Your help, Fred said bluntly. We may have given you a third of our company, George admitted. We also might be a bit out of our league when it comes to this business stuff. That's why we decided to make that your responsibility, Fred added. We'll invent things, test things, and build things. You deal with the business. Right. Harry carefully lifted Hermione off his shoulders and put her on the ground. Hermione, could you tell your father what's happening and that I'd like his advice if he has a moment? All right, Harry, the girl agreed. Coming, Luna. Right behind you, Hermione, Luna agreed. Harry turned to the butler. Is there some place nearby that we can use to have a quick business meeting? Right this way, Mr. Harry, the butler agreed. Thank you, Harry replied. He gestured for the twins to follow him. How do you arrange to stay in such a big house, Harry? Fred asked, awed by the size of the place. It was absolutely massive. It belongs to Hermione's parents. They're letting me stay with them over the winter holidays, Harry replied. The butler opened a large ornately carved oak door and motioned for them to enter the richly furnished room. Do you gentlemen require any refreshments? The butler asked. Not at this time, thank you, Harry said after a quick confirming glance at the twins. Ring the bell if you need anything, the butler instructed as he closed the door. So what's this about? Harry asked. The twins spent a few minutes telling their bus's partner about their meeting and the fact that it had made them realize that they were over their heads. We'll talk to Hermione's father about it, he'll know what to do, Harry decided. Was there anything else you needed? You know that Ron started a custom broom shop? Fred asked. I know that he was thinking about it, Harry replied. He's been contracted to supply brooms for the Harpies, beater bats too, George said. Good for him, Harry commented with a smile. I knew he could do it. He can't, Fred said softly. At least, we don't think he can. Why not? He's got a bit more business sense than we do. But that's not saying a whole lot, George admitted cheerfully. He doesn't have a good source of seasoned wood, he doesn't have professional tools, Fred listed a couple more things. He also needs a bit of ready cash to get started, Fred said slowly. We'd like to set him up with our backer, George agreed. Who's your? Oh. Harry blinked. Tell him to send his business proposal to Hermione. When she thinks it looks good, I'll meet with Ron. We'd also like to toss in a few galleons, Fred added. We can't spare much, well, unless this contract you set up goes through, but we really think our little brother is onto something, George explained. Hermione thinks the proposal looks good. I'll sit down with him. After I sit down with him, I'll make a decision. No problem, Fred agreed. Harpies adore him, so they're willing to wait. Other customers don't and won't. Tell him to stall for now, Harry ordered. Have him mention that he's got a big order for the Harpies and that the best he can do is put them on a waiting list. Right, thanks, Harry, George said in relief, glad that the boy at least gave the appearance of knowing what he was doing. The door opened and Phil strolled in with the girls closely on his heels. I understand you had a business problem. We do, Harry agreed. I was hoping you'd let me pick your brain on ways to screw Charlie out of more money. Something I'm always happy to see happen and even happier to help make happen, Phil agreed, grinning at the three boys. Have a seat, darling, he said, stopping Hermione from sneaking out of the room. But Daddy, business is boring. True, but it allows me to make enough money to buy you those books you like so much, so I expect you to know enough to do it yourself after I'm gone, he retorted. You can stay or leave as the mood takes you, Luna. I'll stay. Luna grabbed Hermione by the wrist and dragged the other girl to Harry's chair and pushed the older girl onto the boy's lap before squeezing in beside them. Fred and George watched as the girls made themselves comfortable. Voldemort was so screwed and they were going to be so rich. Amelia looked up when the door flung open and someone wearing her face burst into the room, turned, and began layering dozens of security charms on the door after closing it and carefully engaging every one of the locks. What's this about? Or Tonks? Amelia demanded, fingering her wand and wondering if she wasn't about to go down in some sort of heroic last stand. Ward's at your place tripped. Susan's fine with the Grangers, Tonks replied. Get into the panic room. I'm sure I'm. Her jaw dropped in astonishment when Tonks bodily lifted her from her chair. The Or then peeled back the carpet with her foot to reveal a trap door. Boss, you're either going to go in on your own or I can throw you in. I believe that someone is testing your security. I don't know that. I do know that if they're gonna get you, then they're going to have to work at it and they're going to have to go through me first. I refuse to make it easy for them. Tonks was breathing hard. Now are you going to go in, Willen? Gly, or am I going to have to throw you in? I don't care which. You may have 15 minutes, or Tonks, Amelia said coldly. Then, the two of us are going to have words. Very hard words about your conduct today. I don't mind you yelling at me, boss, so long as you're not a ghost, that is. Now get in. She carefully dragged the carpet back over the concealed trapdoor and replaced the chair. A slow count to 10 brought her heartbeat under control. Time to see what she could see. The meeting was just winding down when the door opened to admit one of the Granger family's burly drivers. Sue Sandbones just arrived with her security detail. Sir, they say the wards got tripped by something, the driver reported. How are ours doing? Phil asked. They say they're doing all right, the driver replied. If I may, Harry interjected. Please, Phil agreed. Have Susan and the detail checked by your magical people to make sure that they're them and that they're free of compulsions, Harry ordered. If they are. Have Susan brought to the green room and have the guards sent back to the ministry if they'll go. Send someone to tell Madam Bones that her niece is safe if they aren't. Right, the driver agreed. Anything else? Not from you, Harry stated. Nothing I can think of, Phil replied. Anyone else? He glanced around the room. Thank you, Thomas. No problem, sir, the driver replied. Must be trying to make up for what happened with the harpies, George murmured, thinking aloud as he tried to process what was happening. What happened with the harpies? Hermione prompted. Death Eaters surprised them in the locker room and were going to kill all the Muggleborn and Half-Blood players. Purebloods wouldn't leave their teammates, so the Death Eaters decided to kill them all, Fred began. Then our baby brother showed up to save the day, George finished proudly. Walked up right behind them when they weren't looking and provided a big enough distraction for the harpies to close the distance and take out the rest. Is Ron okay? Hermione gasped. Fine, Fred agreed. Better than fine, George laughed. Harpies were very thankful for the save. He came home covered in lip marks. Quote, why wasn't this in the prophet? Hermione demanded. Either the ministry is leaning on them to keep it quiet, Fred said. Or it's because it just happened last night and they haven't had time to print it, George mused. May I use your flow, please? Luna asked. I'm sure this is something Father would like to add to tomorrow's edition of the Quibbler. Go ahead, Phil replied. I'm going to go meet with Madam Bones. I'll go with you, Harry said. If nothing else, fame is useful for getting past secretaries. He turned to Hermione. Would you mind sitting with Susan while we're gone? I can't imagine that this is easy for her. Of course, Hermione agreed. Care to join me after you're finished speaking with your father, Luna? I'd be delighted to, the little blonde agreed. What do you want us to do? Harry, wait here if you can, Harry asked. We'll all go extort money from Charlie later today if we have enough time and his schedule is open. Right, George agreed. We've got some things Ron told us that your father might want to include in his article, Luna, Fred added. Come along then, the little blonde commanded. Hannah was in the middle of a nasty potions essay when her mother burst into the room and grabbed her by the arm. What's wrong, Mum? Hannah asked. Grab your bug-out bag, the woman commanded. Mum, something happened at Susan's house. We need to leave and we don't have a lot of time to talk about it first, the woman explained. Right. Hannah felt sick as she grabbed the pack she'd prepared for the occasion and followed her mother out of the room. Where are we going, Mum? You're going someplace safe. I'm going to St. Mungo's, the woman replied. Mum, they're going to need healers if something's happened, she explained. The woman threw a handful of flow into the fireplace. Safe house. She didn't know where it went, just that Amelia had assured her it was a secure place. Go, I'll join you later. Goodbye, Mum, Hannah said, hugging the woman and hoping desperately that it wouldn't be for the last time. I'll see you later, Hannah, she promised. Now go. Hannah flew out of the flow and into the arms of a very surprised Luna Lovegood. What are you doing here, Hannah? Luna demanded. Neither girl paid the slightest amount of notice to the dozen or so security people in the room as they conversed. Susan's house got attacked and Mum made me come here to be safe, Hannah said in a rush. I didn't know I'd be coming to your house. You didn't, you're in Hermione's, Luna replied. Could you please get off me? I was just finishing a conversation with Father. I'll take you to Susan when I'm finished. All right, Hannah agreed, letting her heart slow down. Do you know what happened? Just that Susan is okay and that Harry is going to rescue her aunt, Luna said, tossing a pinch of dust into the fire. Lovegood shack. Luna, her father's head appeared. What happened? Someone arrived through the flow and cut us off. The little blonde replied. I did not wish to end out conversation without saying. Farewell. Farewell, Luna. Be sure to read the Quibbler tomorrow. Your story about the harpies will be on the front page. Thank you, Father, Luna replied as the connection cut. Come this way, Hannah. Hannah followed the other girl out of the room and down what seemed like a dozen halls and staircases. This is Hermione's house, Hannah gasped. She says it's only her weekend and holiday house, Luna replied. I understand that she has another in London. 2 houses, Hannah squeaked. How rich is she? Rich enough to buy and sell the Malfoy family a dozen times without noticing it, I suspect, Luna said, scratching her chin. I wouldn't advise asking her. She wouldn't like it. She wouldn't know. Ask her father if you want something accurate. Hermione has absolutely no interest in business. Oh. Luna came to a stop in front of a large door and took a deep breath. This is Hermione's room. Harry's is the one next to it. Okay. Have you calmed down? Luna asked softly. What? Susan was quite distraught when she arrived here earlier. I dare say that Ione will not have changed that in the short time they were alone together. If you are calm and I am calm and Hermione is calm, it will be much easier to calm Susan than if you were not calm. Panic is very contagious, calm is also. But less so. Do you understand? Luna stared at the other girl for a few seconds, waiting patiently for an answer. Yeah, Hannah agreed, letting out a breath. I'll be okay. I was mostly worried about Susan. She's okay, so I am too. Good. Luna threw open the door to reveal Hermione doing her best to console a sobbing Susan Bones. Sue, Hannah cried, rushing to the other girl's side. I'm so glad you're okay. What about Aunt Amelia? Susan sobbed. Your aunt will be fine, Luna assured the older girl. Harry's there to look after her and Harry Potter always comes through. Who else can say they defeated Voldemort? She winced slightly at the way she stuttered the name. Yeah, Susan agreed softly. Too bad he couldn't save Cedric. That was after he won a deadly tournament and got ambushed, Luna replied. He went expecting trouble this time. Harry can't lose. The girl's eyes were shining. It was clear that she believed every word she was saying. He doesn't know how to. He's also got your Aunt Amelia to help him, Hermione added, doing her best to hide her nervousness. And all your aunt's Aurors, Luna giggled. Not even Vold, she LPED, him is stupid enough to tangle with all that. I guess so, Susan said despondently. They're right, Sue, Hannah assured her friend. Everything will be fine. Your aunt will be here before you know it. Club. It'd have been much quieter in some ways and he was sure he could learn to tolerate company of idiots. A meeting between equals. A meeting between equals. It had been almost an hour since she'd set herself in the big chair. It seemed like a year. Every second she was waiting for the door to burst open to admit a dozen masked killers. Every minute could be her last. She nearly wet herself when a knock on the door disturbed her reverie. What is it? She demanded. Potter and Granger here to see you, one of the Aurors on the detail called back. Send them in, she ordered, trying not to start cheering. Amelia had a look of intense relief on her face when Phil and Harry walked into her office. Who does Auror Tonks belong to? Amelia demanded. Me, Harry replied firmly. How many men do you have with you right now? She demanded. 10 magical and my non-magical driver, Phil replied instantly. Are they in the office? She asked hopefully. Right outside with yours, Phil agreed. I take it that something happened. You could say that, Tonks agreed, allowing her features to return to what passed for normal. Be good enough to tell them to be on their guard, please. While Phil relayed the instructions to his men, Tonks was opening trapdoor to the panic room to let her boss out. I said 15 minutes, Auror Tonks. Amelia shouted, clearly unamused by how long she'd been imprisoned and by the fact that her orders had been ignored. 5 minutes. Which, I am sure you will note, is a much smaller number than 6 What in the heck gave you the notion that it would be a good idea to lock me in there for an hour? The fact that we've got moles in your security detail, Tonks replied. I don't know what you're complaining about, boss. Yo. Shiny new hidey hole comes equipped with food, water, and a toilet. Posh it is. You forgot to add an exit, Amelia said sourly. That would have appeared 2 hours after my death or removal from the office. Which would amount to the same thing thanks to the new wards, Tonks giggled, feeling almost giddy now that it looked like she was going to live to the end of the day. Later if your office was occupied. What's this about the new wards killing you? Amelia demanded, eyes narrowing. And why hadn't anyone told her about that little detail? They'll scramble my brains if you're hiding and I'm removed from the office. Tonks admitted. We didn't have the time or the skill to finesse it and I didn't want to chance betraying you with a loose tongue. No chance I will now, boss. If I don. T have the guts to go down swinging, then I'll go down the other way. Potential problem addressed, boss. I see. Amelia glared at her oar. We will have words about that later. What makes you think that my security detail has been compromised? Because it has been, boss, Tonks replied. We caught 2 of our own tampering with the wards, so what caused me to burst in here? They broke after 1 of the retirees did something to them that you don't want to know about, and I really wish I didn't know about, and the 2-faced bastards spilled everything. It's bad, boss, it's really bad. Why were they tampering with the wards? Amelia felt faint. Her security was made up of her most trusted aurors. If she couldn't trust them, her chances of surviving to the end of the year had just taken a major hit. Either to prepare for the hit on you or to grab Susan to work as a lever on you, Tonks replied. Not sure, boss. They didn't know the why, just what they were supposed to do and how they were supposed to do it. Who can we trust? Close security for you and Susan is all Muggleborn, half-blood, and retired. I'm pretty sure they're safe. It's the perimeter security that our traitors CA me from, and now they're all tainted so far as I'm concerned, Tonks answered. Got 10 here, 5 with Susan not counting Moody, and another 6 off duty. Mr. Granger brought 10 more, plus his Muggle bodyguard, plus Harry. Thank you for that and for looking after Susan, Phil, Amelia sighed. Happy to help, Phil replied easily. Also happy to suggest that you and she move in with us indefinitely. She'll take you up on that, Tonks interjected, not giving her boss a chance to reply. Sooner than we'd planned, but better now than never. Or Tonks, I'm the boss when it comes to you. Our health and safety along with healer rage, Tonks interrupted. You're the boss when it comes to everything else. If you have a problem with the way I do my job, you always have the option of firing me, boss. But unless and until you do. You do what I say, and I say that you are moving in with the Grangers because I am in charge. True, Amelia agreed. Keep the perimeter going around my house and set the wards to record daily portkeys from here to there. Let's let our friends think that I won't run and see what happens, she suggested. I also want you, darn, you'll be at Hogwarts. Pick someone to poke through the perimeter. Leave the bad apples and pull out anyone trustworthy. I'd rather not throw good ores away when the balloon goes up. No problem, boss. I'd also like your permission to trap the heck out of the place. If the bastards are going to hit your house, I want to make them bleed for it, even if the place is going to be empty, Tonks said with a savage grin. Something Ree's company is happy to help with at depressingly reasonable rates, Phil interjected, assuming of course that they aren't too busy with their other contracts. You have a company, Harry. Tonks blurted. We'll talk about it later. Harry promised. For now, let me be the first one to congratulate you on making it to the top of Voldemort's hit list. It's always nice to have company. I hear it gets lonely at the top. Amelia commiserated with the boy. Here's hoping I don't take your place. Here's hoping you don't lose yours either, Harry replied with a wide grin. How likely do you think it is that Voldemort's purebloods would be able to track you if you used Muggle transportation to get to and from the Ministry? I can set it up so it looks like you're still coming and going by Portkey every day, boss. Tonks volunteered. Would actually make your scheme with the wards easier to pull off if I didn't have to hide the extra trails. Make it so, Amelia agreed. Any other business? One piece, Phil agreed. Hogwarts is being a bit difficult with security. I've managed to suborn their defense professor, but the headmaster absolutely refuses to allow private security on school grounds except in an emergency. I'll have a talk with him about that, Amelia promised. Might take a few weeks to pressure him into it. Might take less time if something happens, Tonks said sourly. I want more men. 2/3 awake at all times, 1/3 geared up and ready to leave at a moment's notice, 1/3 ready to go in a few minutes, 1/3 asleep. Done, Phil agreed. I am going to assume that Charlie is going to want to meet with you concerning this. We'll be by his office later today if you'd like a lift. Please, Amelia said. One more thing. Could you have someone tell Susan that I'm all right? She worries about me. We can call home from the car and you can tell her yourself, Phil replied. Tonks let her features shift back into her boss's face. Let's go. You've got my face again, or Tonks. Amelia pointed out. Gives the bastards an extra thing to think about if they try to cause trouble, she replied. In that case, I'd prefer it if you looked like Harry, Amelia replied. I'd prefer it if you didn't, Harry said quickly, not wanting to throw away something he recognized to be a potential advantage in the event that things turned nasty. They expect you to be here. They don't expect me, so there's a good chance they won't even see me if they decide to make a move, Harry explained. Bloody hard to explain, but I have trouble noticing things that my brain doesn't think are important when I get into a fight. Tunnel vision. He's right, boss, Tonks agreed. Fine, Amelia sighed. But if you get hurt, Harry, I'm going to make bot. Your and or Tonks. Lives a living heck. That goes for you as well, or Tonks. If you get hurt, I promise you will regret it because I will ensure that you regret it. So long as we're all alive, you can do whatever you want. Harry agreed, unconsciously echoing Tonks' earlier statement. The girls all looked up when they heard a soft knock on the door. The minutes had felt like centuries as they waited for some word on the fate of their loved ones. Come in, Hermione yelled. Phone call for Ms. Susan. It is her Aunt Amelia, the butler replied, holding out a highly polished tray with an antique phone. 2 footmen trailed behind the man managing the long cord. Susan snatched the device and stared at it, trying to divine its secrets. Hold this end up to your ear and talk in a normal voice, Hermione explained. She turned to the butler. Thank you for bringing this, she was worried sick. Understandable, the man replied. Will you be requiring anything else? Some snacks would be good, Hermione replied after a moment of thought. I'll have them sent up shortly, the man agreed. Amelia put down the phone with a relieved smile. Both Susan and Hannah were as safe as they were likely to be without leaving the country. Personal matters completed, it was time to get back to business. I need to have a meeting with them, if you please, Amelia announced. Of course, Phil agreed. To the club, he ordered. Yes, sir, the driver replied promptly. Would you like us to wait or for me to send another car to pick you up? Phil asked. A car would be lovely, Amelia replied. Thank you, Mum, he said nervously. Would you mind checking this for me? Of course, dear, Molly agreed. What class is it for? It's for Harry, Ron replied. The twins said that he's the best businessman they know and told me that he agreed to give me some advice if I'd give him a business plan. That was nice of him, Molly mumbled. She took the parchment out of his hand and began going over it. Yeah, Ron agreed. Twins say they might have a big new client thanks to Harry and that they just need Harry to negotiate the deal. They're not taking advantage of him, are they? Molly asked. No, Mum. They told me that they let him have a third of their company in exchange for his help. Ron grinned. Not sure they told him that last bit though. Those boys. Molly shook her head in exasperation. At least it's looking like their dreams might succeed. Amelia glanced meaningfully at her shadow as they stepped into her colleague's outer office. Time for a bit of alone time. Wait here, or Tonks, Amelia ordered. Boss, I'm going to have a quiet meeting with one of my counterparts in the Muggle government. I shall not need you with me, Amelia explained. One of your armed counterparts, Tonks said flatly. Best if I'm there to keep an eye on the situation, boss. Never know what could happen. Best if you do what you're told, Amelia growled. Now, or Tonks. She added after it became clear that her Auror had no intention of following her orders. Yes, boss, Tonks sighed. She walked over to one of the seats and collapsed into it. Always the way, isn't it? The secretary sighed. We do our best to take care of them and they don't listen. How she even lived a week without me, I'll never know. It's like she doesn't understand that it's a big scary world filled with people out to get her. I know she knows it's not roses and kittens cause she came up through the ranks, but it's like she forgot all that the second she got the big chair, Tonks agreed. I'm Tonks. Jane, the woman introduced herself. Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure is all mine, Tonks said automatically. Amelia walked into the office and went through the normal formalities. While taking a seat across from the other man. Pleased to see me, she asked. Pleased to see you in one piece, Charlie agreed. Though it would have simplified things if you weren't. Bastard, Amelia laughed. Always on the lookout for that mythical silver lining, he countered. Cards on the table, Amelia, we're both hoping to recruit young Mr. Potter in a few years. I see no reason why we can't work out a deal now to save us all a bit of trouble later, Charlie said with a grin. Forgive my rudeness, would you care for a cigar and something to drink? Please, Amelia said approvingly. Gin all right with you? As long as it's not watered down too much, she teased. Charlie opened a cabinet to reveal an assortment of bottles and carefully selected one. Navy gin. He asked, holding it up for the woman's inspection. It's fine, Amelia replied. Care to mix it with anything, tonic, bitters? Straight, Amelia said. Right you are, he agreed, pouring 2 tumblers. Started drinking the stuff on my midshipman's cruise and never gave it up. He walked back to his desk and slid one of the tumblers across to his guest. Then, he opened his humidor and took out 2 massive cigars. Quote, my best man managed to steal several cases from Castro. Did a bit to make up for all the bloody headaches the bastard had caused over the years. Why not buy them? Amelia asked, a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. I'm sure I saw a nice little shop down the street that might carry them. Now where's the fun in that? He retorted. Besides, everyone knows they wouldn't taste half as good. If they've been taxed and being stolen makes them taste twice as good. Regarding young Mr. Potter, Amelia took a sip. The main problem that I foresee is that you are focused mainly on dealing with external threats, while I am focused on dealing with internal. Another sip. Your minister has made it quite clear on a number of occasions that he sees his reports to the PM as a formality, Charlie pointed out. Leaving that aside, my duty is to deal with threats to the realm no matter where they originate.